Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
So here we are again. Once again, I find myself talking about Steven Universe. Because if you don't know, I made a video called the Steven Universe Rant documentary, where I explain what Steven Universe is and point out all the flaws that exist within the show. And the Steven Universe documentary has to be my most viewed, most liked, and most hated video on my entire channel. Which makes sense because when you talk about a golden goose like Steven Universe, you're bound to attract what I like to call the hardcore fans of Steven Universe, also known as Steventards. And what I got out of the situation, for the most part, the majority of people agree with what I have to say, is that the defenses for Steven Universe are nigh endless, and they come in waves upon waves upon waves, and it never ends. But I'm getting ahead of myself a bit. Let me step back just for a bit. If you are a hardcore fan of Steven Universe, stay and watch the video. If you truly believe that Steven Universe is a good show, stay and watch the video. Stay and watch the video and continue to watch the downward spiral.
Downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral.
That is Steven Universe, because it only gets worse from here. So I'd like to start off with explaining why I called my video the Steven Universe Rant documentary, because it seems to be a very common question. A lot of people don't seem to understand why I called it that. The reason I called my Steven Universe Rant the Steven Universe Rant documentary is because, if you couldn't tell, I am a comic book / manga reviewing channel. Cartoons aren't something I talk about. The only reason I decided to make a rant video about Steven Universe is because I made a deal with the devil, also known as Justice the Average Man, and that deal was, if Steven Universe hit a wall at some point, I was going to make a video about it. And boy, was it the biggest mistake of my entire life. It was a massive mistake, and I truly regret it. Because if it wasn't for that deal, I would have dropped Steven Universe at season 2, and I would have just been done with it. But no, I decided to suffer and then have to make a video about it. But the reason it's called the Steven Universe Rant documentary is because my audience, the overwhelming majority of them, don't know what the fuck Steven Universe is, nor do they watch Steven Universe. So I had to explain to my audience what Steven Universe is and what's wrong with it at the same time. So in a sense, it's a rant and it's a documentary, because I'm giving information and I'm explaining, or in this case, cataloging what's wrong with the show. Because Steven Universe has so many problems, you could literally write a dissertation on it. You could literally write a book on all the problems of Steven Universe. And the longer the series progresses, the worse it gets. So for those who are new to my channel who don't know, now you know. But let's just dive into this shit show. Let me stop wasting time. Let me get right into the meat of the issue.
Life is like a nigger here in Old Nicks.
So before I start ripping apart Steven Universe once again, I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes I made in my first video. One of the mistakes I made is that the video had very strange audio quality. I wouldn't say it's poor, but it wasn't that good. And the reason why the audio was so bizarre and why it wasn't synced well is because during the time I was recording from different locations. I was moving at the time. So the audio quality ended up changing with each different location. Not to mention I was trying to beat the hiatus, which I heard was going to end in September. So I didn't want to add any more or any new information to my video when I finally decided to publish it. Not to mention I had important things to take care of at the same time. So in a sense, I was kind of rushing to get the video done. And as a result, I didn't elaborate on certain points. But I don't believe that made any of my points any less valid. And for that, I truly apologize. This video, on the other hand, will not be recorded in parts or in different locations. It's going to just be one long recording. So the audio is going to be consistent and it's going to be clean, like a babbling brook during spring. It's going to be smooth. So you don't have to worry about any audio issues or any syncing issues or nothing of the sorts. This is going to just be one giant recording. So on to my next mistake. In the writing section of my video, I made a statement that said that lions were only native to savannas and not deserts. And that was a reason why lion shouldn't have been there. This was wrong, because looking further into it, I found out that there is a subgroup of lions that do indeed live in the desert. I believe they're called the calamari lions or something along those lines. And they are a subgroup of lions that do live in the desert in Africa. And they're probably one of the biggest and strongest lions. So that was a foolish mistake on my part. What I had done is I had Googled what was a lion's natural habitat. And obviously I found savannas. But what I should have done is I should have Googled, are lions native to deserts? Are there any lions that live in deserts? That's what I should have done. And I would have gotten the answer right away. So that was just a stupid mistake on my part. That's a mistake that I shouldn't have made. Another mistake that I made was during the characterization section of my video. I stated that lapis lazuli's function wasn't said in the show. This is wrong, because apparently her function was said during the song What's the Use of Feeling Blue, which was sung by the Diamonds and Their Pearls.
An agate terrifies, a lapis terrifies.
Now obviously I still have a huge problem with this for obvious reasons, because in that same video I mentioned how I didn't like receiving every message, especially important ones, through song, because this type of thing would happen. After binge watching the series for a third time and hearing like the 300th Steven Universe song, at some point my brain just started to shut down and I must have missed it. And my main issue with the fact that Lapis's function was one, mentioned in song, and two, mentioned in a completely random scene, is that why wasn't this mentioned when Lapis was giving her flashback? Why wasn't her function mentioned then? You know, why didn't Lapis state her own function when she was giving exposition? Hell, I would have even accepted if Paradox stated her function. That would make more sense to me. But no, her function has to be stated in a random scene with the diamonds involved when they could be giving more important information. I see this personally as just really poor writing on the Cruniverse's part, but that's neither here nor there. Nonetheless, it's still a mistake and it shouldn't have happened, but I still think it's fucking retarded. Another mistake that I made was once again in the writing section of my video when I was mentioning the Steven Universe hiatuses. I accidentally said 2005 for one of the hiatuses when I actually meant 2015. It was a really small mistake and I'm surprised I didn't catch it in post. I find it to be very strange, but you know, most people for the most part understood what I was trying to say. Other people just didn't quite get it, and you know, for that I apologize for any confusion I caused as a result. I don't know what caused me to say 2005, because that doesn't make any damn sense since Steven Universe was created, or at least it was it first aired in 2013. So you think something would click and it'd be like, oh, that doesn't make any goddamn sense. But apparently I missed it. So that's a massive mistake on my part. Another mistake that I made was in the behind the scenes section of my video. I stated that Joe Glass, the author of the Steven Universe article talking about concrete and racism, I stated that he spelled apologize wrong. This was an error on my part because I'm not from the UK. Apparently, it's the UK spelling of apologize, so it has an S instead of a Z. You know, I didn't know that Joe Glass was from the UK. I thought Joe Glass legitimately spelled apologize wrong. You know, I followed him on other articles in the past, and Joe Glass isn't known for writing very good articles. So that's an honest mistake on my part. In this case, Glass Joe won this round, but he definitely won't win the next round. So that's an honest mistake on my part, and you know, I had no idea and it shouldn't have been made. I was too quick to jump the gun on Glass Joe. Another mistake that I made was in the animation section of my video, where I stated that Takafumi Hori, who was a guest animator on the show, animated the episode Mindful Education. This is wrong. Takafumi Hori didn't animate anything. What he did is that he storyboarded and written the episode. The reason why this confusion happened is because while I was doing my research, they kept calling him a guest animator. So I just assumed, you know, as a guest animator, that he animated that episode. You know, it's a very obvious mistake on my part. I should have looked a little bit more into it. And I mean, he works for Studio Trigger. He's animated amazing works, or at least he's been a part of amazing animation projects. So I just assumed, you know, as a quote-unquote guest animator, that he would have animated that episode, but apparently I was wrong. He just did the storyboards and he wrote some of the episodes. So that's a mistake on my part, and I will further address that later on in this video. Another mistake that I made was once again in the behind the scenes section of the video, where an article stated that Rebecca Sugar, where the author of an article stated that fluoride represented a polyamorous relationship. I got polyamory mixed up with polygamy. If you don't know the difference, polygamy is basically Basically, you have multiple spouses, meaning you're married to multiple partners, in a sense. While polyamory means that you have multiple partners in the sense of dating or sexual activity, kind of like friends with benefits times 10. That's the difference between polygamy and polyamory. Polygamy is more of a committed relationship, and it mostly involves marriage, while polyamory is more of, you're in an open relationship and you're either dating or you're sleeping around with multiple partners, which in my opinion makes the whole situation even worse. Because in a sense, it's now implying that Rebecca Sugar is trying to teach kids about polyamory, which in my opinion is worse than polygamy. Because at least polygamy, you're in a committed relationship. With polyamory, you're not really in a committed relationship. So now that I got my mistakes out of the way, it's time to move on to the main meat of the issue, and the main reason why this video even exists.
I hate fucking niggers. Niggers suck dick.
So once again, I will be revisiting and reiterating some of the arguments I made within the writing, because apparently a lot of hardcore fans wanted to defend these parts of the show, and I'm here to explain why you're absolutely wrong. One of the statements that was said to me in the comment section was that gems technically don't die. When they're shattered, they just have shattered consciousnesses. This is wrong, because it's stated in the show, and it's stated in the Wikia, that when gems are shattered, they do indeed die.
Does that mean you'll live forever?
No, we don't age, but we can still get hurt and die.
So my original statement saying that when gems are shattered, they die, and that the force-fused gems are basically literally dead gems, which is a plot hole, was still correct. It still stands. But for the sake of argument, let's assume that when gems are shattered, they don't die. Just for the sake of argument, let's just make that assumption. Here's the problem that I personally have with gems not dying after shattering. One, it takes away the suspense of danger. And two, it takes away the sense of death. Because we know that Steven is basically a pseudo-god. We know that he has the ability to not only heal gems, but restore inanimate objects. What is stopping Steven from using his healing spit to restore a gem basically back from the dead? Or basically reunite their consciousness? What's stopping Steven from reviving a shattered gem? This is a serious question to the hardcore fans of Steven Universe. What is stopping Steven from restoring a shattered gem if gems technically don't die? Because we know he has the ability to do so. And this creates a massive writing problem within the show. Now let's move on to the force-fused gems and the issue I have with that. And the issue I have with force-fused gems, in a sense, being shattered gems just brought back to life and forced together. Being, as you would say, shattered consciousnesses forced to merge together. Here's my issue with that. One, gem experimentation has not been fully explained in the show. So you have to assume that gem experimentation somehow brings shattered gems back to life. You would have to make that assumption that gem experimentation violates the rules of the show and allows shattered gems to form consciousnesses again. Because in one of the clips in my first video, I showed a force-fused gem that was literally a hand and a foot. Like literally just two shards put together, not even forming a whole gem. So my question to the hardcore fans of Steven Universe, what is the limit for a force-fused gem? If it's as easy as taking two tiny shards, merging them together, where they would form literally a hand and a foot to even create a form, what is the limitation of that? If there's any limitation at all. And do you truly believe it's okay for Homeworld to be able to take two shards of a shattered gem, just melt them together and say, there you go, now we have a force-fused gem that's able to form and has some degree of consciousness, even though it's scattered to some degree? Do you not see the problem with that? Do you not see the horrid implications that implies in terms of writing? In terms of writing, it makes no sense whatsoever. Like, if it's just that easy, what is stopping Homeworld from creating an army of force-fused gems? And that's where this ends. It leads to violation of lore. It is a plot hole. It's not an inconsistency. It's not a retcon. It is a plot hole. And I stand by my statement on that. Force-fused gems are a plot hole, and they contradict the previous statement that shattered gems die. And this is mostly due to the fact, and I said this in my video, of a drop/delayed plot point that has not been answered. And there's a lot more. Now we move on to the biggest plot hole/plot convenience in the entire series thus far, the cluster. I stated that the cluster being able to bubble itself is a plot hole, since throughout the entire show, the cluster is the exception to the rule of not just gems, but gems in their gem state having the ability to bubble themselves. And some of the excuses I heard were absolute Looney Tunes. Like, I've never heard such poor argumentation in my entire life for a direct plot hole. Like, I could not make this shit up. Some of the arguments that people were throwing my way was things like, oh, the gems were bubbling each other. Okay, how? How are the gems bubbling each other? Through telekinesis? They're supposed to be shattered consciousnesses. How's that possible? How are a bunch of shattered consciousnesses able to form enough consciousness to bubble themselves, quote unquote, or even bubble itself as a whole? One of the pieces of information I found was that the cluster had so many shattered consciousnesses that it formed one consciousness and therefore had the ability to bubble itself, which I call bullshit on that, because as we clearly see in the episode Gem Drill, that is not the case, so it makes no sense. It's like a bunch of shattered consciousnesses basically screaming at each other to do things and in an incoherent way. It's like trying to communicate to someone with brain damage, or it's like a bunch of people that have brain damage trying to communicate with each other to form one task, and they all have to meet a consensus for this task to even happen. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And like I said again, and I'll keep reiterating it, the cluster is the only exception to the rule. Another excuse that I heard was that because Steven could bubble himself, therefore the cluster could bubble himself. That's retarded. Only a hardcore fan of Steven Universe can make an excuse like that. No one in their right mind will compare Steven Universe's protective bubble to a stasis bubble used to keep gems in kind of like a hyperbolic state. Although the powers are similar, they are not the same, and they have different functions. Steven's protective bubble is to protect him from attacks. He could be in his bubble without going into a stasis, or without putting anyone in there in a stasis. We see this numerous times within the show. Meanwhile, when a gem is bubbled, they're in a sort of stasis, and this is mostly the gemstones, not the actual gem themselves. As seen in the episode with Steven, not going into a stasis when he was bubbled by Garnet. But gem shards and gemstones, or gems themselves, when they're in their gem state, are in a stasis mode when they're bubbled. That's how they stop themselves from forming. That's why when Steven was bubbled by Garnet, he was able to move, while gems or gem shards that are bubbled aren't able to move or function until the bubble is popped. We can clearly see this with Peridot. When Steven popped Peridot's bubble, she started to form again. And another thing, it'd be advantageous for a gem to bubble themselves anyway, because in a sense they'll be putting themselves in an eternal sleep, which to me doesn't really make a lot of sense. So if you are a hardcore fan of Steven Universe, I want you to explain to me how gem shards bubbling themselves make any sense whatsoever. And that brings me on to my next point. Another excuse was, and this comes with the partial forming issue. I stated that the cluster partially forming and then deforming is a direct plot hole because gems don't have the ability to just form and deform at will. I stand by this statement, and it turns out after doing more research, once again, the cluster, once again, is the only exception to the rule, and once again, I'm going to call bullshit, because throughout the entire series, no gems are able to just form and deform at will. One of the examples that were given to me in the comments section was that Amethyst, she was changing her form in an episode, so therefore, the cluster can do the same thing. Here's the problem with that. When Amethyst was changing her form, it was usually around her same kind of gem mass, because every gem has a certain mass. She's usually around the same size, that's why she was in such weird proportions. The same rule should apply to the cluster as well. Meaning, the moment the cluster decided to form, it should have essentially destroyed the Earth, regardless if it decided to form into a hand or not. That should have been irrelevant. No matter what form the cluster decided to take, it still theoretically would be bigger than the Earth, thus destroying the Earth. This is lore and rules set in the show and shown in the show. So we have what I like to call a plot hole. The cluster is the only exception to the rule, and it should not have that ability. It's only given this ability for plot convenience. That's the only reason. And even if you still find a way to tippy toe around the cluster forming out of its mass at will, you still can't explain the cluster deforming at will, because there is no examples in the entire series that show gyms having the ability to deform at will. If there's any evidence of this, prove me wrong. Hardcore fans of Steven Universe, prove me wrong. Show me the example that's not the cluster of a gym deforming itself. The only way I've seen a gym deform, quote unquote, is when they're poofed, when they're defeated, or when they're injured. So once again, I'm calling this a plot hole because it violates the rules and the lore set by the show, either for plot convenience purposes or because the Crewniverse truly forgot what the rules of their show is. Because once again, and I have to reiterate this show does not have any writing. It's all storyboard driven. The next writing issue that I saw being made by hardcore fans of Steven Universe is that if you watch the show in one sitting, meaning if you binge watch the series, the pacing is better. I absolutely disagree with this statement. That's like me telling people, if you binge watch the Naruto anime, the pacing is much better. And I think hardcore Steven Universe fans who are saying this are being disingenuous. You are lying to people. You are setting people up to sit through just numerous episodes of absolutely nothing going on. I wouldn't make my worst enemy sit down and watch the entirety of the Naruto anime, just like I wouldn't make my worst enemy sit down and watch the entire series of Steven Universe. Because in a sense, you will have the same feeling. It brings on the same effect. Although Steven Universe technically doesn't have filler, it feels like filler. We call them townie episodes, but that's a code word for filler. It's a code word for nonsense that doesn't matter. And trust me, you have to get through a lot of nonsense that doesn't matter until something important actually happens.
I swear this show is more focused on setting up for townie shenanigans than it is focused on setting up the world lore or action. The townie stuff is so plentiful that it sucks up any interesting arcs to be resolved in one episode, like Garnet having anxiety about being a leader. Garnet basically has less focused episodes than Sadie.
And usually, the most important events usually happens at the very end of the season. Am I the only one that has noticed that? Am I the only one that has peeped the fact that the most important events happen at the very, very end of the season, usually? So I still believe that Steven Universe's pacing is absolute dog shit, even without the hiatuses. I will agree the hiatuses make it much worse, but even without the hiatuses, Steven Universe's pacing is still absolute dog shit, and it's still on par with Naruto anime's filler. It's still on par with that type of pacing. And I think all the hardcore fans of Steven Universe need to stop telling people that the pacing is better if they binge watch the show. That is demonstrably false, and I wouldn't recommend that anyone do that. Now we come to the most interesting part that I'm going to be talking about in this video, and that is about fusion.
Fusion is the undeniable best element of Steven Universe.
The fact that fusion represents all relationships and it's just so fucking broad. I have a problem with this. I have a huge problem with fusion being so broad because it creates issues. Fusion is so inconsistent. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. For example, the allegory with Lapis and Jasper. The whole meaning behind their fusion is supposed to represent an abusive relationship. And obviously, if you are watching the series, you are supposed to assume that Jasper is the abusive one. Lapis is the one getting abused. We are supposed to assume that. But if we go back and we look at the series of events, a whole different message is painted. Because last time I checked, the one who agreed and initiated the fusion was Lapis herself. Lapis could have not fused with Jasper, but she agreed to do it. And when she did it, the next thing she did was trap Jasper in the ocean for months upon months upon months, keeping her there until Watermelon Island, until she, in a sense, lost control. Now, sit down and think for like 5 seconds and notice what I just said. Malachite, which was the fusion between Jasper and Lapis, didn't reappear until who lost control? That's right, until Lapis lost control.
I've got to hold us down with the weight of your planet's ocean. I've got to keep her.
Not Jasper, Lapis. So who was the one who was in control in this abusive relationship? That's right, it was Lapis. So therefore, by that logic, wouldn't it be safe to assume that Lapis is the abuser in the relationship since she's the one with the control and that is stated in the series? Yet, this allegory for an abusive relationship, we're supposed to see Jasper as the abuser. If you are a hardcore fan of Steven Universe, you have to admit admit, that makes no fucking sense whatsoever. It completely contradicts the events that were shown. And that's just one of the problems I have with fusion being so broad as to representing all relationships. I mean, if fusion represents all relationships, right? Does that mean when Jasper forced fuse with that corrupted gem, Jasper in a sense was committing an act of bestiality or rape? Because I'm pretty sure that corrupted gem that has the mind of a wild animal didn't consent.
You know, we're so much weaker than you. Fusing with you is like our one chance to feel stronger.
I can't believe Peridot is giving us so much trouble.
But it hardly matters.
right, Garnet?
Holy shit, Sugar, this is getting a little dark. But in spite of this scene, the show is apparently teaching kids the wonders of consent.
Rape.
Because as this comment so wonderfully communicates, there are little boys the world over who never learn not to.
Rape.
So it's a beautiful thing, really, to teach kids how to properly consent to.
Rape.
Because otherwise, how would the kids know not to rape?
Kids love rape.
So I want to know, I really want to know, if you're a hardcore fan of Steven Universe, maybe you can explain this to me. Maybe you can help me understand. What type of relationship did Jasper and that corrupted gem have? Just sit there. Think about it for a couple seconds. If fusion represents all relationships, and I mean all relationships, what type of relationship did Jasper and that corrupted gem have? This is the problem that I have with fusion being so blatantly broad that it could basically mean anything, because you run into problems like that. So I want to hear the damage control that a hardcore fan of Steven Universe has for me. Not to mention, I didn't even mention the contradiction when it came to Ruby's testimony on how fusion works.
I've seen gems fuse before, but I had no idea that's what it felt like. I always thought, I never realized that fusion, that you disappear like that.
It's never like that. Whenever I've fused, it's always just been me, but bigger.
And the situation with the topazes.
I don't know what Topaz would do if she didn't have Topaz. I've always wanted to tell me how I'm helping me through this, but there's always someone between us.
By being separated and shattered.
What was I thinking?
That's the problem with you fusions. Sooner or later, you will become sentimental.
Ruby stated that when the same type of gems fuse, they don't have any real feelings towards each other when they fuse. But for some reason, the two topazes had feelings when they were fused. They didn't want to be quote-unquote separated. What does this mean? And does this not contradict Ruby's testimony? Is this not a direct contradiction in the story? Hardcore fans of Steven Universe, explain this to me. What does that mean? Help me understand, because apparently I'm missing something here. Apparently I just can't understand. So maybe a hardcore fan of Steven Universe will help me understand what does that mean. Once again, another flaw in fusion. Listen, fusion is so inconsistent and so broad that there was recently a book brought out discussing fusion specifically. I believe it's called Fusion for Beginners and Experts. So I want the hardcore fans of Steven Universe to tell me, why in the world is there a book about fusion? Why is there a book explaining fusion if fusion is just such an easy concept to understand? Just sit there and think about it. I mean, I know it's easy not to think about these things when you shut your brain off and you don't think about them, but some people out there actually do think about things and actually want their stories to be somewhat consistent. So hardcore fans of Steven Universe, explain to me how fusion is not inconsistent and broad as fuck and runs into problems in the series. And this will lead me to my next point of Steven Universe's messaging being all fucked up. Like the messages and quote-unquote themes in Steven Universe are just messed up. They're just horribly executed. They're executed in the worst possible way, and some of them don't even get resolved. A perfect example, Steven has this tendency of living in his mother's shadow. We see a clear example of this in the trial, where he is literally willing to commit suicide for something that his mother did. And at no point is this ever addressed or resolved in the series thus far. And I find this to be a huge problem, because in a sense, this is basically an allegory for an individual taking the responsibility of another. This is the sins of the father, in this case, sins of of the mother issue. What is the message I'm supposed to get out of that? And it's never resolved. And it constantly comes up over and over and over again of Steven being in his mother's shadow and never getting out of it. I would say this is more of a flaw on his part. I would say this is more of a flaw on Steven's part, and I will get into this issue more in depth later on in this video. But that's just an example of the messaging being all fucked up in this show. I mean, a good example would be the Lapis Jasper situation. That's a fucked up message because it creates confusion of how abusive relationships work. Because obviously, if you were to look at this scenario, Lapis is the obvious abuser in the situation, hands down, just by the logic of what is given in the show. And one of the biggest messages that really get fucked up in this show is the whole Pink Diamond being Rose Quartz scenario. And I feel like I have to explain this again because this was something that really tore the fandom apart, like really bad. I mean, it was bad for them. It was good for me because it was hilarious, but it was bad for them. It was bad for the hardcore fans because when you actually think about it, when you actually sit down and you think about the events that ensued because Pink Diamond threw away her identity and faked her own death and the damage that it caused, what was supposed to be the message out of that? There's some people saying that, oh, it's a message about being yourself. Well, that doesn't make any sense. That's a literal contradiction because Pink Diamond literally wasn't being herself by making her permanent identity Rose Quartz. Not to mention the fact that she fractured her authority because not everybody a part of the Pink Diamond Authority joined the Crystal Gems. You know, a perfect example being Jasper, probably the best villain in the series.
My diamond! Your diamond! Pink diamond!
Because of Pink's action, she created a villain. Another thing is her subordinates being turned into monsters or being murdered, i.e. shattered, or being experimented on. Not to mention, and as Paradox said boldly and correctly, if it wasn't for Pink Diamond faking her own death and taking on permanently the persona of Rose Quartz, there would be no cluster in the earth.
Rose Quartz believed all life was precious and worth protecting.
Well, if she wanted to protect it, she did a lousy job. There'd be no cluster if the Earth had stayed a colony. Now there's no colony, and there's gonna be no Earth, so thank you, Rose Quartz. You doomed the planet.
So because of Pink Diamond, she potentially put the Earth at massive risk and caused for the experimentation and the creation of a gigantic gem weapon that'll probably be used to take over more planets in the entire galaxy. Like, what am I supposed to get out of that? Am I supposed to honestly see Rose Quartz or Pink Diamond as the good guy in that situation? What message am I supposed to get out of that? What quote-unquote feeling am I supposed to get out of that? And those are just a few examples of the messaging just being all fucked up in the show. Another thing I want to touch on is the whole redemption of the diamonds. I feel like this is very important. And this kind of, in a sense, leads to a bit of shattering in the Shattered Consciousnesses argument. Gems are immortal beings. They don't need to eat, sleep, breathe. They don't need shelter. Their bodies adjust to any environment that they're in. This is clearly seen and stated in the show.
We're gems. We're a spacefaring race designed to conquer other worlds. Our physical forms adjust automatically to the gravity of any planetoid.
So in a sense, when you make gems not die from shattering and you take away the sense of danger and death, you make the gems more powerful than they already are. You make them more overpowered than they already are. Now I know what you're thinking, where in the hell am I going with this? And this is where I'm going with this. In terms of redemption, despite the gem race not needing to eat, sleep, breathe, or need any of the necessities that a normal living being would need, for some reason, we don't understand their motivation or their goal when it comes to intergalactic conquest. We don't know why the diamonds do what they do. We don't know why the diamonds want to create more colonies and expand the gem empire. We don't know what the diamonds' goals are. And because we don't know these fundamental things, how can the diamonds be redeemed when we don't even know what the problem even is? You're basically asking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. We do not understand the main villain's objective. We don't understand the main villain's motives. We don't understand the main villain's goals. So how in the world can Steven hope to redeem them? The show literally plays the fact that Steven is Pink Diamond as a reason for him to change the gem's ideology in one fell swoop. And I have a massive problem with this. This is a massive writing issue. If you are a hardcore fan of Steven Universe, you should have a problem with this too. This is a literal example of Deus Ex Machina. I'm not going to watch any of the future episodes, so I don't know how this is all going to play out. now. But if it turns out that White Diamond is redeemed, or her ideology is changed, or she is talk no jutsu by Steven, it will prove my point once again that there is no real conflict in this show, and that this show makes no goddamn sense. And I want to get on to my next point, and that is the argument of nitpicking. A lot of Steven Universe fans, especially the hardcore ones, kind of shoot away my arguments by just saying they were nitpicky. Now, to be completely honest, in the writing section of my video, I found a lot more continuity errors, inconsistencies, and retcons, and I took them out for the sake of not being accused of being nitpicky, and I only left in the most important ones. I'll give you an example. The fact that Pearl has to do a silly little dance to take objects out of her head when it's explicitly shown that in other situations she doesn't have to do that. So it creates the argument, so it creates the issue of why does Pearl have to do a silly little dance to retrieve anything from her head when we see her doing the same thing without doing the dance? Like, that's an inconsistency right there. Or something that I noticed lately, that, you know, Amethyst has a certain limitation to how long she could hold her form. For example, when she was pretending to be Jasper, she only could hold her form for a fixed amount of time. But in the whole Ruby Rider situation, Amethyst transformed into a horse, and she did it for at least an entire day without turning back. Now, if you've ever seen a horse a day in your life, horses aren't small. Horses are huge. Horses are massive. I would argue that Amethyst as a horse is around the same size as Jasper, roughly around the same size. So, hardcore fans of Steven Universe, explain to me why in the world can Amethyst not hold her form in one situation, but could hold her form just fine in another situation? Here's another example of some inconsistencies. And here's something I want to say. From experience, what you call nitpicking, I see as tiny inconsistencies and retcons that become bigger over time. Like, something as small as bubbling became a plot hole over time because of how it was handled. When someone who is trying to defend something says nitpicks, even though it's legitimately an actual inconsistency, I see it as an inconsistency that the hardcore fans don't want to admit it's a problem. But I warn you, if you are a hardcore fan of Steven Universe, this is a mentality you do not want to take, because those little nitpicks, those little quote-unquote nitpicks, are going to become plot holes at some point. They're going to become plot holes at some point, and you are going to regret it. The same thing happened with Naruto. It had little inconsistencies, it had a few retcons, not that big a deal, and eventually as the series progressed, it became bigger and bigger and bigger until it became a plot hole. So from experience, I am warning the hardcore fans of Steven Universe that those nitpicks that you shoo away because they're not important enough to you, those nitpicks are going to become plot holes at some point. And that's why I brought them up. That's why I brought up all those inconsistencies and all those retcons and all those plot holes. Because from here on out, they're only going to become more and more prevalent as the series progresses. Think about it this way. Say that you're on a ship and it has a small hole and it's leaking water. And instead of fixing the ship properly or even plugging the hole, you just decide to leave it. And eventually, as you're riding the ship to your destination, the ship begins to take on more and more water and the hole gets bigger and bigger. And guess what happens? And I said this in the first video and I'll reiterate it again. Eventually, your ship is going to sink. And there's two things you're going to have to do when that happens. You could either drop ship, you could either abandon ship, or you could stay on the sinking ship. Those are the two options you're going to be left with at the end of the day. And I'm saying this out of pure experience from what I've seen when it comes to writing. Those small nitpicks have a tendency of becoming plot holes if not addressed over time. So for all the hardcore fans saying, oh, this is too nitpicky for me, oh, this is not important, you could easily ignore this, mark my words, you're going to regret that later. In the future, you're going to thank the fact that I mentioned those small nitpicks when they turn into gigantic plot holes that won't be able to save this show. But that's all I want to say in terms of writing.
Hey Garnet, why do you guys keep saying Mom's sword shattered Pink Diamond when Bismuth outright said it can't?
They're all poor like Obama. Fuck Marshall Obama.
Now let's move on to characterization. Now, a lot of hardcore fans are making excuses for Steven being an absolute terrible character and a terrible main protagonist. One of the arguments that was used against me was that Steven is supposed to be annoying, which I find to be ridiculous. Steven is the main character in this series. Everything that is shown is through Steven's perspective, meaning if Steven is supposed to be annoying, he's going to be annoying in nearly every single episode. Like, it's not my fault that Steven is so annoying, he makes me want to rip my ears off and eat them.
Then there's Steven.
Now we have to replay the final dungeon all over again! It's not fair!
Shut the fuck up!
Why do And the fact that me pointing this out shouldn't be seen as a problem, because it's a massive problem in terms of the series. Steven being an extremely annoying protagonist in the show taking place in his perspective makes it that much worse.
Steven Universe follows Steven Universe. Ugh. You find out that Steven's his mom and his mom is dead, but Steven's not dead. And also, like, all these people are aliens and there's more aliens and there's evil aliens, but they don't matter. Just fucking focus on these damn townies. I heard that this guy opened up a tater tot shop.
Another argument that was used against me was that Steven is supposed to be a Mary Sue, which, I mean, is the wrong term. I meant to say Gary Stu. That's the right term for what Steven is. For the pure fact that he becomes OP with little to no effort. And like I said before, and I'll say this again, this reminds me of Naruto, because we're supposed to see Steven as the underdog. We're supposed to see him as the hybrid child that was born into a terrible situation that he has to, in a sense, to some degree, take some responsibility for to help protect the Earth, as he fights against a gigantic intergalactic army that could just easily curve stomp him, the crystal gems, and all life on Earth with ease. But what Steven in reality really is that he's basically royalty. He's basically the Destiny Child. Just like Naruto, in reality, he was born to rule them all. He was born to be powerful. Even though the show created the illusion that he was the underdog, he in reality was the chosen one. He got the Harry Potter treatment. And the same thing applies to Steven as well. Steven was destined to be great from the very beginning. Steven in reality was a diamond all along, which gives him immense power. For all we know, the abilities he has might not even be any of the real abilities of a real rose quartz. Those abilities may be just unique to him, because in the entire series, we don't see any other rose quartz gems. And this was something that was also used against me. Hardcore fans said that they were indeed rose quartz gems on Earth at the time of the rebellion. This is false, and I showed direct evidence proving that this is a false statement.
There were no rose quartz soldiers in her entourage, and none in her guard. So how did a rose quartz with no business being anywhere near Pink Diamond get so close in the first place?
But if you have evidence to prove me wrong, hardcore fans of Steven Universe, please show it to me. Because last time I checked, there were absolutely no other rose quartz gems on Earth during the rebellion. Blue Zircon said so herself. Not to mention, it still doesn't cover up the plot hole that rose quartz referred to herself as an amethyst when the kindergarten amethysts are all fucking purple and she's pink. But I'm deviating. Steven is the Destiny Child. He is chosen. He was meant to be powerful. Now, as a result of him doing that, he's able to talk no jutsu any opponent. He's able to change their ideology with ease. He's able to control the other half of the Diamond Authority and pretty much become a matriarch with little to no effort whatsoever. Hardcore fans of Steven Universe, you can't sit here and tell me that you do not have a problem with that. You can't tell me that you do not have a problem with Steven Universe literally being given his power. You can't tell me that this is acceptable writing. You can't tell me that this is acceptable characterization. Because as I see it, Steven is not even a good fighter. We rarely see him train. And when we do see him train, it's usually the bare basic stuff. So when Steven tied with Amethyst in a fight, did he really deserve it? When Steven beat Bismuth in a fight, did he really deserve it? Because I mean, he was just destined to be this strong from the very beginning. He was destined to be a matriarch on Homeworld, just for the simple fact that he exists. He was destined to have these great powers and gain even more powers as time progressed. He is the definition of a Gary Stu, an incompetent character with little to no talent that is destined to be great due to his lineage, just like Naruto. And it's unbelievable how some people can see Steven as a good character. It's just unbelievable. And a lot of people, I can't say it's hardcore fans on this one, a lot of individuals got really pissed that I called Steven a Fruit Loop because he was seen wearing a dress and acting feminine randomly.
The power to heal.
Are you a homosexual?
And once again, the reason why I pointed out such things because it's inconsistent with his character. We know throughout a good portion of the series that Steven inherently is not feminine, at least in my point of view from watching the series. Steven is not inherently feminine. In those specific episodes, especially Rocknaldo, Steven was more feminine than he should be.
Well, that's fucking gay.
In Sadie's song, Steven was too eager to want to put on a dress. I mean, he can already sing and play music on his own. He already played an instrument it on his own. He was too eager to get in that dress. And I find that to be a bit bizarre. And also, I mean, is there really anything wrong with me not enjoying the fact that boys acting like girls is being heavily promoted? Am I the only one that thinks it's a bit bizarre that people are trying to promote boys acting like girls and seeing it as completely normal, especially when they're not gay or anything? Like, I wouldn't even consider Steven to be a metrosexual. I wouldn't even consider him to be a girly boy. I wouldn't even do that because there's no really hardcore evidence on it, with the exception of like maybe a few scenes that are just randomly there. But a lot of people in the current year got pissed off because I don't want to see boys acting like girls for the sake of some crazy new age postmodern agenda.
Recently, I've been getting a lot of criticism regarding derogatory terms towards homosexuality. Words like faggot and gay and just other words that aren't very good. I'm fully aware about the effects of such words like faggot and gay. And I know how hurtful it can be for certain people who take it the wrong way. But actually, on a serious note, I'm deeply upset at myself for saying such hurtful words. They are uncalled for and rude. So I want to apologize to everyone who's ever been offended. It's time to turn a new leaf for me to wipe my ass with. And I'm gonna start fresh. Clean. I'm gonna be clean Clarence from now on, okay? I promise. Hello, boss. Anyways, I just wanted to apologize and what the hell is that? What the hell? What's going on out here? Huh?
I hear screaming down the hallways because you're gay. You're a giant faggot, you should kill yourself. I hear screaming down the hallways, you giant asswipe. You're a total faggot, you should kill yourself. You should kill yourself. You should kill yourself. You should kill yourself. You should kill yourself.
You know, like normal people, I would like to see boys act like boys, men act like men, and women acting like women and girls acting like girls. Unless the characters are actually gay or hell, even metrosexuals or tomboys and tomgirls or whatever the fuck. I would like my characters to act like the sex that they actually are, and I don't understand why this is considered to be a controversial opinion. I find it to be a bit strange that it is, but nonetheless, a lot of people got ass violated that I mentioned this and that I use it against Steven in terms of his characterization because it is inconsistent with his character. At least in my opinion it is. And a lot of people and a lot of individuals in the current year has to stop promoting this behavior because it's not a good idea to try to encourage growing boys to act more and more feminine. What this does is it causes mental issues and problems in the future as they become men. So I don't think it's a good idea to do something like that, nor heavily encourage something or promote something like that. It's like a South Park situation. You're promoting Steven acting feminine for the sake of Steven acting feminine and no real logic being used. So yeah, I'm heavily against Steven acting feminine unless he either magically transforms into a girl or he's gay, or hell, even a metrosexual. I even take that as an argument. But Steven acting feminine for the sake of acting feminine is not good enough for me. And the Crystal Gems technically being considered women in raising Steven his life, I'm not gonna let that be an excuse to why he's doing what he's doing. I find that to be a cop-out for why Steven is acting feminine. Because believe it or not, Steven has the quote-unquote good dad. So where's Greg? Where's the good dad to teach, Steven the boy to be a man? Once again, another point against the Greg universe, and once again proving my point that Greg is a terrible dad. And I also don't like the fact that Steven is constantly living in his mother's shadow, and it's been dragging on for episodes. Like at some point, Steven has to discover his own identity and be Steven Universe, not Pink Diamond. I mean, if you look at the newest poster for the newest bomb, that I will not be watching by the way, because fuck this series, once again, I'm seeing Steven in a dress and still living in his mother's shadow.
Get a load of this faggot!
If you're a hardcore fan of Steven Universe, this is not what a good character looks like. This is what a terrible character looks like. This is what a character that's pretending to be another character looks like. But I want to move on to my next subject, the topic of Sadie Miller. Because I know one individual out there wanted me to talk about Sadie Miller. You know, he was like, Auraman, what the fuck? Why didn't you talk about Sadie Miller? She's a shitty character. And yes, she is. I agree. But you have to understand, I was talking about like 15 characters. I picked quite important characters, and one character I hate being Ronaldo, and one character that I like being Onion, as side character I was going to talk about. I just didn't feel it was the need to add Sadie into that. But for the sake of fun, let's talk about Sadie Miller. Sadie Miller is just a townie that works at the Big Donut and is friends for whatever reason with Steven and gives him donuts, which is probably one of the reasons why he's so fucking obese. Sadie is a terrible character because she purposefully traps Lars and Steven on an island in order to get Lars to fall in love with her. And this was in episode 30, Island Adventure. Now this is all sorts of wrong. This is just all sorts of fuck up. You're in a sense kidnapping Lars and kidnapping Steven in order to meet your own goals. And it's another form of messaging in this show getting really fucked up because we're supposed to see Lars as the asshole at the very end of this episode, but in reality, Sadie is the asshole for, in a sense, kidnapping Lars and Steven in order to meet her own sexual desires. I'm just gonna say it for what it is, her own sexual desires, and it's really fucked up when you actually think about it. Sadie is also one of the reasons why Steven is caught in a dress because she refused to sing because she was actually getting nervous that her mom was getting involved in her life and wanted her to be happy. And this was in episode 69, Sadie's song. Funny enough, Sadie was one of the few people to notice that Lars was acting strange in episode 88, The New Lars. And it's kind of weird because at first she didn't notice anything weird until Steven just outright tells her, which is, okay, you're in love with this guy. You're in love with the dude who has holes for ears, but yet, like, she noticed that he was acting bizarre, but she couldn't really pinpoint the issue. Instead, what she assumed is that Lars was making fun of her, which is something he does on the regular. And trust me, their relationship is just dysfunctional as fuck. But I mean, with all of the abuse that she takes from Lars, when Steven, who's pretending to be Lars, and trust me, I know this sounds very fucking weird, actually shows Sadie some affection. I just want to point out the fact that it's Steven pretending to be Lars. Sadie gets pissed off about that when Lars usually doesn't show her any affection. And that was the thing that made her realize that Lars wasn't acting as himself. It's just really weird to me. Like, their relationship makes no goddamn sense. And then, in episode 126, Sadie throws a fit that Lars disappeared. It's kind of ridiculous, because, like, she claims that she cares about Lars, yet the person that she should be angry with is Steven, because Steven has all the information about where Lars is, what is he doing, and what's happening, yet Steven hasn't told anyone. Steven, in a sense, caused a massive situation, and I find myself talking about Steven again because he's such a terrible character, but Steven lets Sadie antagonize that situation even further. And this leads to another problem, because apparently Sadie was so depressed that Lars was trapped in outer space that she decides to quit her job, run away from her problems, and form a band called Sadie Killer and the Suspects, which, once again, another bad message being delivered by the show. Just run away from your problems, quit your job, and just go AWOL because you're suffering from some hard times. Like, that's the message I got out of that episode. And that was in episode 137, Sadie Killer.
Not to mention the whole Sadie arc basically says, oh hey, just quit your job. It'll have zero negative impacts on you. Just those around you, but fuck them, am I right?
Like, Sadie is not a good character. Sadie is just another townie with little to no significance in the main plot, like every other townie. And I know when the series was starting off, a lot of the hardcore fans were saying that, oh, Sadie was going to be a prominent character because she defeated an invisible, corrupted gem that one time, so therefore she's not useless, she's not Muda, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, that's pretty much Sadie Miller in a nutshell. A terrible character with little to no importance in the entire story.
If I could begin to be half of what you think of me, I could do about anything. I could even learn how to love like you.
Now on to a serious discussion about Andy DeMeo. And the reason I'm even talking about Andy DeMeo is because a lot of individuals, both hardcore fans of Steven Universe and casual viewers of the show, kind of labeled Andy as a fascist.
Okay, how about a one-to-one modern-day explicit depiction then? Because the episode Gem Harvest strongly featured Steven's xenophobic uncle Andy, whose beliefs are so thoroughly strawman Republican that I think I last saw him in a Wolfenstein game. The episode in which he features in has him thoroughly spit on Steven's actual family, rage about their non-standard relationships, throw a conniption over the fact that Greg is letting Lapis and Peridot live in the barn, and generally behave about as pleasant as a catheter filled with wasps, only for Steven to then deliberately insist that everyone make up because they're family, and for Uncle Andy to see absolutely no consequences for his horrible behavior.
And a racist.
Are racist.
Racist.
And I find these accusations to be absolutely fucking ridiculous. And this is all stems from the fact that Andy found Lapis and Peridot on his property and that he was trying to defend his property. That's where this issue stems from. Because if you actually watch the episode and you actually think about what was said and what actually happened in context, Andy wasn't wrong. He was absolutely right. When Andy came from his flying trip doing whatever and he found two strangers in his family's barn, he had a completely normal reaction, and that is to defend his property. Now, I know in the current year, property rights are not cool and all, but I do believe in property rights, and what Andy did made lots of sense. He has every right to defend his property, and I don't think he should be called a fascist or a racist for calling out the obvious. Like, Andy saying that the gems are illegal aliens is not wrong. They are. This is later on confirmed with Pearl when she was chasing after not Rose Quartz. You know, Pearl admitted that she was not a citizen. You know, she's an alien from another planet.
I don't have a license.
All right. But you're old.
What was I supposed to tell the DMV? That I'm from another planet? I'm not exactly a citizen, Steven!
So technically, Andy's not wrong. They are illegal aliens. He's not wrong. Or him being a little perturbed by the fact that Greg changed his last name from DeMeo to Universe. And this has nothing to do with Rose Quartz. He changed it on his own for, you know, popularity purposes. And Andy, like any normal person, has every right to be confused. Andy didn't know he had a nephew, which is really his second cousin removed or something like that. It's really complicated. But nonetheless, you know, I'll say, you know, nephew. He didn't know. Greg didn't tell him anything. But to be fair, Andy was, you know, traveling. But I can understand why Andy would be in such a state that he's in. Him getting all this new information at once, and him being seen as the bad guy because he's supposed to be the quote-unquote conservative. Even though he's right, and even though he has a right to be pissed off in most situations. Like when Pearl tore apart his family's plane and used the engine to make an oven. That's his family's plane. It's a family heirloom. Obviously, it would kind of piss him off, especially since he seems to be a guy who's really into planes. Imagine if somebody came into your house. Let's say you were a connoisseur of stamps. Let's say you are someone who loves to collect stamps. And somebody came into your home, took your stamp collection, went to your stamp collection, and used those stamps to mail letters. Wouldn't you be pissed off? The same thing applies here. Or imagine that you're on vacation, and you know, you're on vacation for a long time, for X amount of time, and you come back and you see a bunch of strangers in your house, you know, and they say, boom, squatters' rights, I have the right to be here. Wouldn't you be pissed off and want them off of your property? Or better yet, let me give an example that's a little bit more relevant to this situation. Let me give a better example. Let's assume that you had a vacation home, right? And you only visit your vacation home, you know, seasonally, like maybe every summer or so. And when you're not in that vacation home, there's a bunch of strangers living in their vacation home. And you come to your vacation home and you say, hey, you don't own this property, get the fuck out. Would you find that to be a bad response? I don't. It's your property. You own it. You have every right to tell them to get the fuck out. And Andy did the exact same thing. So Andy didn't do anything wrong. He has the right to know what the hell's going on, and he has the right to know why two strangers are living on his property. I mean, he called them hippies, which wasn't far from the truth, since basically all they do is they sit in the barn and play arts and crafts until Steven shows up for some plot to happen. So Andy, once again, isn't wrong. But we're supposed to see Andy as the antagonist because conservative man bad, and I find that to be absolutely fucking ridiculous. Not to mention, are we gonna even mention the kind of dark connotations that something happened to Andy in his life, and that's the main reason why he ran away? Because apparently something happened that the story doesn't actually tell us, and I'm quite curious to know what the fuck happened to Andy that would cause him to return to the barn. I think they kind of imply that he had a wife or something. I'm not entirely sure, but you know, I find that to be very interesting. And at the end of the day, he accepts the gems and he lets them live in the barn. He lets them live in his barn for free. I mean, don't even get me started on a terrible world building going on in Gem Harvest, where, you know, Andy's literally attacked with magical powers, and it's instead of freaking the fuck out and having an aneurysm about that, he just calls it hippie magic. It's funny, but you know, it's like another strike against the world building as well. I think at some point he comes to terms that the crystal gems are indeed aliens, with how out of touch they are with humanity, which I find to be weird since, you know, Garnet and Pearl has been on Earth for thousands of years. And same thing with Amethyst. Amethyst has also been on Earth for thousands of years. So I find it to be a bit funny that happened. But yeah, I don't see Andy as a villain. I don't think Andy should be put on par with the Diamonds. You know, I don't think Andy should be called a fascist for taking reasonable action and being curious of the world around them, which is how characters should be when you're actually discussing world building. You know, I don't consider him to be a racist. It's just ridiculous. And all that comes out of it for the hardcore fans is that conservative man bad. And that's just fucking retarded. Andy did nothing wrong.
Niggers, I hate them! They are stupid and they can't do taxes! Niggers!
Now I'll move on to my next point, which is dealing with the animation of the show yet again. In my video, I did not talk about how poorly done the storyboards were. And I do agree, the storyboards are absolute ass cheeks, especially compared to the storyboards of The Last Airbender, or just storyboards of any professional animation that's been done in the previous generation. The storyboards are incredibly lazy, and as a result, I do agree they do result in bad animation. And the main issue with this is that one, once again, Steven Universe is a storyboard-driven show, and two, Rebecca Sugar, who's supposed to be overlooking the show, gives the artist too much freedom when it comes to actual storyboarding. Now, they should have character sheets to check for consistency, so even if the storyboarding is bad, at least, you know, when they ship it off to South Korea, they can check and make it consistent, but this seems to never happen, which I will be further discussing in my next one. But I mean, there's not really much more I can add on here other than it's just an act of just pure laziness and pure unprofessionalism, like the lack of a standard and just too much artistic freedom going around, to the point where the characters are drawn off-model and inconsistent, which leads me right into my next point of outsourced animation. Now, a few people got a bit confused of what I meant when I was discussing cheap animation. They thought when I meant cheap animation that it meant bad. No, I meant the literal definition of cheap animation. Because when you outsource, there's only two reasons for a company to outsource. Either to pay someone to do the same work less, or to pay them to do better work less. You know, it's to save money for the most part. Another reason is because there's a lack of individuals meeting the requirements, meaning this, for example, for Cartoon Network, it'd be a lack of animators. There's a lack of animators, therefore the network is forced to outsource to South Korea in order to actually animate anything, which I don't believe is true. And so if you look at how South Korean animators are paid compared to US animators, South Koreans get paid less, with the exception of 3D animation. But for this specific case, I will be focusing on 2D animation. When it comes to 2D animation, South Koreans get paid significantly less to animate a product than United States animators. Because if you don't know this, the USD is worth more than the South Korean won. South Korean animators get paid 2/3 less than a United States animator would get paid for the same, if not better work. That's the problem I have with the outsourcing of animation. It takes away jobs from US animators, and it's basically sending it off to an animation studio, which for all we know could be a sweatshop, where the animators get paid less to create a product that would be more in the United States. That's what I meant with cheap animation. And obviously, it's clearly shown that the South Korean animators don't give a shit. They're given the material and they do whatever the fuck they want. One of the problems that occurs because of this is that it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to fix animation errors when they occur. Because you can't just go back to the person and say, hey, fix this and do it efficiently. No, what you would have to do is you would have to ship the storyboards back and explain to the South Korean animators what happened and what was done wrong and for them to fix it. Because there's only so much an editor can do when it comes to fixing animation errors.
As an editor, I can tell you from experience both these things would have taken minimal effort to fix, especially since they were both only a few frames and had no movement. I'm surprised that it hadn't been fixed before airing, as I have personally fixed the Greg animation before myself in my 1000 Years AMV, and that took me under a minute to do. Credit to them though, they did fix that error in later releases and reruns of the episode. In my opinion, these animation errors are because of carelessness in post-animation.
Like, for example, off-model animation, poor scaling. Like, you can't just edit that shit out. Once that shit is there, it's there. So shit like that happens when you outsource animation and have poor business practices on top of that.
The creators formulate crutches saying if a character is recognizable, then it's on model, which is stupid. because that means something like this is on model. They further it by saying that even if their heights change, they still keep some parts true, like X must be smaller than Y, but then, whoops! Literally in the episode Pool Hopping, there is a montage of Steven and Garnet passing out pizzas, and every shot, Steven is a different size. That's not on model, that's not stylistic choices, that's lazy.
You know, I'm not a huge fan of just the overwhelming outsourcing of animation, because I know for a fact there is some good United States animators here, and I think they deserve a job working in the industry compared to a bunch of lazy fucking hacks that can't even do storyboards correctly, or can't even create proper model sheets that even the South Korean animators could follow, and as a result resulting in their product having completely shitty animation, because the animation in Steven Universe is bad, and it's bad due to unprofessional and poor choices and poor business practices. So I'm going to go right into my next point. I didn't say this in my last video because I'm not a huge fan of throwing around accusations, and I want to be as objective as possible when I'm dealing with these type of situations. But I'm going to outright say it because it seems like nobody's going to say it. It seems like nobody's going to just call out the pink elephant in the room. So once again, I'm caught in a position where I have to call out bullshit where I see it because nobody's willing to do it. I'm going to say this straight up. I truly believe that the Crooniverse, if not Rebecca Sugar, I'm not sure who's doing what, is outright stealing animation. Dead ass. I'm not even fucking around. I truly believe they steal animation because there are numerous examples of animation that is literally copied and pasted from popular anime. Just think about this. Imagine that every dynamic and good scene that is in Steven Universe is all stolen animation. When I did more research on the references that was in Steven Universe, I found that there was more stolen animation than I originally thought. Not only did they steal animation from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Revolutionary Girl Utena, they also stole from Dragon Ball Z and also other anime like Gurren Lagann and plenty more. For example, the scene of Ruby and Sapphire dancing, that very inspirational scene that made all the hardcore fans nipples hard, turned out to be actually stolen animation from Revolutionary Girl Utena. So that means that very influential scene that actually meant something was actually, that's right, stolen from something else. And there's plenty more. There is plenty more. Like, just imagine every scene that's supposed to have some sort of impact or supposed to be dynamic is taken. The only exception to the rule is Mindful Education, and that's because they had a real professional from Studio Trigger doing the storyboarding. That's the only episode that has dynamic animation that's not stolen from another anime, and it is abysmal that this is happening. I'm not sure if this is still the standard now, but when I was growing up in the anime community, this was considered to be a sin. It was considered to be a sin to steal animation. It was considered a sin to just copy and paste animation. And Steven Universe does that a lot. It does it so much. And that's if you ignore all the references in the show. There are so many references and so many stolen animation, it makes you really think, is there any actual originality in Steven Universe? And we clearly see what happens when Steven Universe tries to actually do an action scene without stealing animation. That scene being the scene with Jasper versus Amethyst, where the animation was just so shit. It was like 2 to 3 frames of animation. And I showed an image or a video of what the animation was supposed to look like. And it was supposed to be based on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And it was failed because they didn't copy the animation correctly. And I found it to be absolutely hilarious. When they actually do the attempt to actually have some animation on their own, they fail spectacularly. And Robo Buddies said it well herself. They know what a good action scene looks like. They just don't know how to fuck to do it. So what they do is they cut corners and they steal animation from other better shows and use that as the standard for their animation. So I would say that Steven Universe has objectively bad animation. If you are a hardcore fan of Steven Universe and you really cherish this show, you have to have a problem with this. This is a big issue, and I feel like this issue is not going to be resolved anytime soon.
And from yet another standpoint, there are so many homages to anime that it just kind of dampens the original part, because you start to think, well, fuck, did they actually make this, or is this just another rip-off of some super early anime?
Niggers are so dumb and they are also poor niggers!
Now I want to do something that's a little bit more interesting. I want to do something that no one else has ever done before, and that is talking about the other Steven Universe rant videos. Because I find it to be a very interesting subject to talk about. Because no matter how many problems you find in Steven Universe, there's always something new to find, and there's always something new to add. Because Steven Universe literally has so many problems, you can't get them all. Like in my original video, I couldn't even get all the problems with Steven Universe. After watching more rant videos, it turns out that I missed a couple things, and I find it to be interesting. Like the whole phenomenon with the rants is that no matter how much research you do on Steven Universe, you are bound to miss something, and I find it to be really interesting. So without further ado, I want to talk about one of the earlier rant videos done on Steven Universe, and that's E:'R's video, Steven Rapeyverse, or how I learned to stop worrying and love to fuse.
So the show's about this fatso and his mom's going on adventures and protecting the Earth from other gems? Yeah, they haven't been real clear on why the gems are fighting their own kind, or why in a world that's apparently constantly plagued by gems, nobody seems to give a shit.
Where he pretty much quickly summarizes what Steven Universe is, explains some of the problems with Steven Universe, such as world building, voice acting, animation, characterization.
Now, if I did a play-by-play of every mistake made in every episode of this show, we'd be here for around 20 hours and ain't nobody got time for that.
But I really want to focus on the main meat that got him into a lot of trouble and even got his video age restricted. And that is insinuating that fusion equals rape and basing it on the time that Pearl tricked Garnet into fusing. Now, originally when I first watched Steven Universe, I had the same idea that E:'R had with his video, and I thought fusion was also an allegory for sex. And to some degree, I still believe it is. But unlike most people, I was more mature about it because it didn't really bug me that much.
Then there's the real subject of Steven Universe's praise. The lesbians.
Here's my laffy saffy. You're embarrassing me in front of Steven.
Me being an avid anime watcher and a manga reader, something like that wasn't a big deal to me.
No, for kid shows, this is not. I mean, I watch anime. Oh, I've seen way worse.
Because cartoons in the past have always had allegories that kids couldn't possibly understand, and I thought this was another thing. So it wasn't a big issue for me. But some people weren't as comfortable with this because some people saw these scenes to be potential propaganda for their children, and I kind of understand. And I also kind of understand why Rebecca Sugar changed into relationships to stop her from getting in trouble with the network. Because something tells me that Cartoon Network wouldn't approve something like that, because it is supposed to be a kids show aimed at children from 6 to 11. But ER did show scenes where fusion was sexually suggestive, and he does make a pretty good argument. The majority of his arguments are right.
Meanwhile, Rebecca Sugar herself has admitted quite pridefully that Steven Universe was intended to tear down and play with the semiotics of gender in cartoons for children.
And even though he's technically wrong due to Rebecca Sugar flipping the script, his video is still hilarious, it's still on point, and it still stands up to this very day. And I would say ER has one of the best videos against Steven Universe to date. The only video I think that may be able to compete or even come remotely close would have to be RoboBuddy's video, which I will get into in a moment. But for the most part, to sum this all up, I find ER's video to be more of entertainment than a hardcore critique, even though most of the points that he made are correct and on the ball and on the money.
With every new episode, Steven goes back to being the chunky, oblivious retard he was previously, having learned nothing. And the Crystal Gems continue to view Steven as the chunky retard that he is, oblivious to their own retardation. Although, to be fair, Garnet does stop to listen to Steven sometimes. Pearl does not, and Amethyst is too busy stuffing her fat fucking face.
ER, at the end of the day, similar to how I am, is to some degree an entertainer. He is to some degree an edgelord, and there's nothing wrong with that. And he did complete his goal of criticizing Steven Universe in a creative and funny way.
Gender is a social sciences term from 1955, coined by a sexologist named John Money.
I did not.
Gender is defined as the state of being male or female, female, typically used with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. In layman's terms, gender is not your biological sex, but what you mentally think is your sex. Now, some of you might be thinking that the brain is biological, and so there literally couldn't be any separation of your mental state from your biology. To put it another way, there'd be no meaningful separation between the terms gender and sex. But John Money thought differently. He thought if, say, a boy were socialized enough to be a girl, that boy could fundamentally be a girl. That is to say, he thought there were no innate differences between males and females, contrary to the entire field of biology. Now, John Money was unable to get anybody to take his gender pet project seriously until a boy by the name of David Reimer came along. Upon birth, David lost his willy during the penile mutilation ritual, and so Money found the perfect opportunity to swoop in and perform a bout of human experimentation. He had the infant boy's testicles lopped off, replaced it all with an artificial vagina, and then had the parents raise David to be a girl while undergoing hormone treatments. Furthermore, he had David, as a young child, imitate sex acts with his twin brother to normalize David as a bottom. Money even had the brothers undress and engage in genital inspections, which he took a photograph of on at least one occasion. Money described the experiments as successful, though David never ended up identifying as a woman and described his visits with Money as traumatic. But whatever, close enough. Except that in adulthood, David's brother killed himself by ODing on antidepressants, and David later shot himself in the head with a sawed-off shotgun.
You're always going to see people that are going to say, well, the Dave Reimer case could have been successful. I'm living proof, and if you're not going to take my word as gospel, because I have lived through it, who else are you going to listen to? Who else is there? I've lived through it. Is it going to take somebody to wind up killing themselves, shooting themselves in the head for people to listen?
To this day, there isn't a single shred of evidence supporting the existence of gender, in humans or the rest of the animal kingdom for that matter. So remember kids, when you use the term gender, you're using the unproven terminology of a mad scientist who happily committed human experimentation, tortured a pair of twin boys, and drove them both to suicide, and got away with it. But I'm sure there's nobody else who would want to experiment on children with such a thing.
So if I had to give ER's video a rating, I'll give it maybe between a 9 to an 8 out of 10. It's a really funny and entertaining video, and it brings up a lot of good points. And even though he's technically wrong on fusion due to Rebecca Sugar retconning fusion, I still understand where he's coming from because I had the same notion as well.
The show does a lot of interesting things with gender. Steven is not your stereotypical aggressive little boy. He's pretty feminine. Another thing that I absolutely love about the show is that so many of the characters are voiced by awesome women of color. There's also a lot of allusions to lesbian relationships, and even though it's not the same thing as explicit representation, it's still a step forward considering it's a children's cartoon. It's also really interesting because some of the characters straddle the line between masculine and feminine, and it's clear that they don't conform to male or female. I think the show does an interesting job at portraying non-binary relationships.
I think you may have an idea.
Now on to Robo Buddy's video, the Steven Universe rant. Plain, simple, and clean and straight to the point.
However, this show has a number of flaws. They were small and ignorable when the show initially aired, but since have grown to be impossible not to notice. And so, I'm going to point them out in a video that I call Steven Universe Isn't As Good As Everyone Says It Is. I mean, it isn't bad or anything, but it's probably gonna hit a brick wall at some point, and I want to be the one who called it.
Bitch, you guessed it! You was right.
Robo Buddy's video is definitely up there, on par if not better than E:'R's video. Robo Buddy's field of expertise seems to be animation, while for me, it's writing. And what makes Robo Buddy's video really interesting is her views on the animation. And even though Robo Buddy's does bring up points in terms of writing and characterization and the pacing of the show, where her video really shines is what she's really passionate about, and that is animation. And she describes why Steven Universe has such poor animation in terms of how the action scenes aren't dynamic or creative, how Steven Universe takes a lot of his action scenes from other popular anime, how Steven Universe could have better scenes and better interaction with the characters when animated. For example, instead of having constant shots, reverse shots, reverse shots and shots over again.
So much shot, reverse shot.
Shot, reverse shot. Shot, reverse shot.
shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot.
Like, so much. Shot, reverse shot.
Shot, reverse shot, 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 shot, reverse shot.
Like, so.
Shot, reverse shot, 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 shot, reverse
You do realize that there are other ways to convey people talking to each other, right?
Or shifting the camera or shifting the view of the character just slightly to having a better view to kind of create the emotion that the scene conveys. I found it to be very interesting, and I learned a lot of new things because RoboBuddies, from what I've heard, wants to be an animator or is an animator. So it makes a lot of sense why RoboBuddies would be very passionate about animation and it'd be the main focus of her video.
I have devised a specific science to creating a good action scene, and I call it the WEC rule. WEC is an acronym that stands for weight, environment, composition, and character. These are the 4 traits that you must have to make a good action scene.
But if I would have to sum up RoboBuddies' video, I would say that if you are looking for someone to really tear apart Steven Universe's animation, that's the video to watch. That is the video that focuses in hardcore on animation and is very, very good.
This is one of the biggest and most recognizable flaws of Steven Universe. The fact that characters are frequently drawn off model with no consistent heights or proportions. Now right away, I want to dispel the argument that this was a stylistic choice. Stating that constantly drawing characters wrong is okay because it's a stylistic choice is like saying it's okay to draw your shitty anime characters with weird pant legs and arms constantly behind their backs because it's a stylistic choice. It's not something unique to be celebrated. It's lazy and it's unprofessional. I mean, for God's sakes, it is an animator's job to make sure that characters are constantly on model and proportional. These people aren't even doing what is required by their job.
I would say RoboBuddies' video is the catalyst to the discussion with Steven Universe's animation. And if anyone knows RoboBuddies, or if RoboBuddies just so happens to watch this video, I would like to ask, did you drop Steven Universe yet?
But if that whole Rose didn't actually shatter Pink Diamond thing wasn't a red herring and is actually something that's going to be set up, then I am fucking bailed.
Because what you said would happen, did happen, and it turns out Rose Quartz is Pink Diamond and the whole trial was a red herring. So I'm really curious to know if you are still watching the series and if you still like the series. I'm really curious because you are absolutely right. Steven Universe did hit a brick wall and you, just like a lot of other people, and I'm one of the few in there, called it. You are absolutely right. So I'm just curious to know, are you still watching the series and are you still a fan of the series despite the very thing that you mentioned would happen happening? Did you jump ship? I really have to know. But yeah, with that being said, I'm just gonna move on to the next Steven Universe rant. Oh yeah, and before I forget, my rating for RoboBuddies rant, I'll give it between a 10 to a 9 out of 10. Somewhere around that. It's a really, really good video. And it's the starting point of the discussion when it comes to animation in Steven Universe. Now for the next video, Easy Peasy's video.
It's no secret that the Steven Universe fanbase is considered to be unofficially, officially, the worst fandom to ever exist. But the real question is, why is that? What makes them this way? To answer this question, I watched the entire show, seeking a clue, and now that I've done that, here are my findings. By the way, in case you're wondering who the best fanbase is, it's JoJo.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes.
My thoughts on this video, it's not that good. It's not a good video. It has some points and it does have a right to exist and it definitely could be used to start a different discussion, but I personally don't think Easy Peasy did what he set out to do, and that is prove that Steven Universe is a bad show. Now the reason why I say this is because Easy Peasy spends more time talking about the Crewniverse and the potential bad practices that they might have rather than talking about the show itself.
Now, take a gander at the first page of this list and tell me if you notice anything. Anything at all. Come on, really activate those almonds. In case you haven't guessed it yet, you might notice now that aside from the voices of Steven and Greg, almost every other cast member on this list is a woman, usually a woman who isn't white. Now, I'm not saying that minority women can't act, it's just that when you look at something like this, it's hard not to come to the conclusion that the people on this list were hired based on sex and race rather than skill and talent, which would explain why they have so little of it.
And this comes off to the viewers as vitriolic and hateful. And I kind of see the problems that people have with this video, because it does delve in a little bit into politics, just a tiny bit. And that's something that you don't want to do when you're trying to take down the show. Because what I did when I made my rant video is that I held Steven Universe by its merit, and I took it apart based off of its writing, its characterization, and its animation, and the subcategories in between those. And the only time politics was even mentioned in my video is when I was making fun of other people using politics in their video. Because in my opinion, and I know both sides are going to disagree with me on this, I don't think Steven Universe is as political as people say it is. I will agree it has a political background, and I will agree that certain episodes are political, some being things like Rock and Aldo.
How to protect yourself against rock people? What? Alien entities walk among us? They're adding mind-controlling minerals to our water supply? They hate men?
And Gem Harvest, those are political episodes, but for the most part, Steven Universe keeps its nose clean of politics. It's not as heavy as other mediums I've seen as of late that are just pure propaganda. And I do understand that the mainstream is also pushing progressive propaganda onto people and using that as a metric for why Steven Universe is good. And I'm heavily against that. And although I do believe that Easy Peasy could have done a better job by talking about the show more instead of attacking the creators, and I guess I have such a huge problem with this because, you know, my thing is I try my best not to go after the artist but the work itself. It's a principle, it's a value of mine. Unless I feel like something just demonstrably bad is being done, I will not go after the creator or the artist or whoever is running the show, and I will destroy the show on its own merit because I believe that's a better thing to do. You know, I would not want to create an unnecessary witch hunt if I don't have to. And unfortunately, I think that's what a lot of people got pissed off with Easy Peasy for. I do think his video was funny to some degree. It was hilarious to some degree. I mean, Easy Peasy does work for Encyclopedia Dramatica.
You're an admin at Encyclopedia Dramatica? Is that right?
Yeah.
So this is to be expected. This is something that he would do according to his character. But unfortunately, as a result, he couldn't change as many people's minds, and his video really came as off-putting to a lot of people. So Easy Peasy's video, Steven Universe, a garbage show made by garbage people, unfortunately, due to the standards of rating a show, gets between a 5 to a 4 out of 10. Because Easy Peasy, you should have really spent more time focusing on the elements of the show than the creators themselves. And although I do believe your video has a right to exist because it does talk about some very important issues and why the show is so fucked up, you also take the risk of, you know, hardcore fans, casual fans, and people who don't know what the fuck is going on from taking you seriously. But I do believe that your video has a right to exist and can be used in the future, especially when dealing with the conversation of the Crewniverse and what they do behind the scenes. To some degree, I do believe it is a video that has a right to exist. But it's a bit unfortunate that it didn't create as big of an impact as you wanted it to. But still, pretty interesting video nonetheless.
I saw a video by a YouTuber I really like, E::R. He made a video making fun of Steven Universe.
Now on to the next video. The video that made the entire fandom spurg out. Lily Orchid's video, or Lily Pete, or whatever the fuck he's calling himself nowadays. Steven Universe is garbage and here's why. The legendary 2-hour video that made every single hardcore fan of Steven Universe just want to rip their faces off and just run into the street and play in traffic. Like, this video, man, it got so much freaking attention. Hardcore fans were literally blaming YouTube and anyone else involved for this video even existing. This video became a hot topic for every single hardcore fan of Steven Universe and would spark a discussion from even here on till now until the very future. But let me give my honest opinions of Lily Orchid's video. Now, I'm going to be completely honest here. Lily's video is only half good. Half of the video, Lily Orchid makes some really good points. But the second half is where the video goes downhill. And I think everyone knows why. Because just like Easy Peasy, but to a greater extent, Lily Orchid gets extremely, and I mean extremely political halfway through the video.
Oh really, Lily? A bland generic white boy has his importance to the plot artificially inflated among the numerous women and non-white characters? Gosh, what a mystery! Okay, I walked into that.
Whoa, 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 whoa! 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 Whoa!
So for an hour straight, it's just political nonsense. And not just any type of political nonsense. Oh no, progressive political nonsense.
The space fascists crash the party and Steven tries to make friends with them. That's a whole mess of fucked up that we'll get into later. Although I find it both hilarious and sad that the first gay wedding in a children's show had to share its screen time with, look how sad these Nazis are. I mean, good on Rebecca Sugar for accurately reflecting modern politics at least.
I can see through your writing that you're fucking retarded.
Now, if you are a long-time watcher of my channel, you already know my feelings towards progressive politics, and that I absolutely 100% disagree with progressive politics due to the effect that it's had on the arts sector in the West. And I really believe that the progressive politics being thrown around in the video really dragged it the fuck down.
There's a reason that stories about LGBT relationships rarely cover these kind of issues, and that's because when these issues are botched this badly, it ultimately ends up being a reinforcement for conservative paranoia about gay relationships as some kind of twisted deviancy and finds its way into the next bill to criminalize being gay. So there's been something of an unspoken agreement to not cover those things until it can be certain that they won't become arrows in the quiver of the ban gays crowd. Conservatives and their stubborn bigotry are the reason LGBT representation is as politicized as it is.
Oh my God! Stop! The first half was on point, it was objective, it was clear, concise, and then it became racial coding.
Anyway, what does this have to do with Steven Universe? Well, racial and gender coding is universal among the gems. It's been blatant and in your face from the moment the series began, and only recently did Sugar confirm that racial coding is a deliberate design aspect, which makes it all the more strange in how exactly the show treats its black characters in the main cast. This was most recognizable with the introduction of Bismuth, a character that was appropriately coded, considering her overwhelming characterization as a revolutionary against an unjust, oppressive regime whose supreme leader has white in their name. From the characterization to the visual design to the fucking voice, you'd have to be willfully ignorant to not see what's going on here. The fact of the matter is, Bismuth is coded black.
It became sympathizing with fascists, it became sympathizing with Nazis, it became hidden racist, it became hidden pedophile, it became conservatives are bad.
White supremacy, eugenics, the mass slaughter of racial minorities, Jews, gay and trans people, communists and the disabled.
It just really dragged the video the fuck down. And that's why I said that Lily's video is only half good, because the other half is really hard to get through. And it's very obvious that Lily Orchid is a progressive.
A literal white moderate being snippy and dismissive of a black woman who wants to fight against an oppressive regime. Pearl's growth in this episode hinged on her ability to tear apart a large, unrepentant black woman.
Which meaning, in terms of political viewpoints, I 100% disagree with Lily. And I find this video to be a little bit ironic because Rebecca Sugar, to some degree, is also a progressive.
Non-binary people are, by their very definition, interesting.
So it's literally a progressive fighting another progressive. It's literally what you would consider an SJW eating their own. And to some degree, it's ironic and it's hilarious and it was really entertaining to watch. Because Lily Orchid's main argument overall, or at least main message, is that Steven Universe is a bad show because it does progressivism wrong or it doesn't do progressivism enough. And I find that to be hilarious because progressivism is the reason why shows like Steven Universe are so horribly bad. Like, most of the problems with Steven Universe is due to its progressive background. It's due to the mainstream media inserting their political viewpoints, which are progressive, onto the show. It's due to the target audience in reality being angsty teens, 2 adults, and progressive adults at that, instead of kids that are allegedly 6 to 11 years old. So it's really entertaining to see one progressive attack another progressive about a show not being progressive enough. It really is. And there was one statement that Lily Orchid makes that really got under my skin, and that is, art is political.
All art is political.
Everything is political, Sean.
Which I completely disagree with. That same notion is what took down the entertainment industry. It's the same notion that took down the comic book industry. It's the same notion that is currently attacking the manga and anime industry, and so on and so forth. Progressivism, in terms of freedom of expression in artwork, has done a terrible job and has caused a lot of problems in the quality of products in the Western arts sector. And I feel like I have to state this because no one else is calling the pink elephant in the room once again. No one is getting to the crux of why Lily Orchid's video is at least half bad. And I feel like, once again, I'm put into a position where I have to do it because nobody wants to do it. And I understand why nobody wants to do it, because nobody wants to start talking about politics. You know, politics can be inherently divisive at times, and I even try to avoid it myself. But now I'm put into a position where I have to talk about it because half of the video is political, and it's politics that I vehemently disagree with because it took down an entire medium, and not just a medium, but a company that I hold dear. So when it comes to half of the video, I 100% disagree with it. And I believe that if Lily Orchid was to get his way when it comes to progressive politics in art, the art sector would be doomed in this country because progressivism has spread to video games, anime, it hasn't touched manga yet, but it's getting there, movies, and pretty much all other art forms that you could think of in the West. And it's dragged them down to the point where they can't even compete with Far Eastern animation and probably won't be able to for a very, very long time. And in all honesty, and it's a bit off-putting, but Lily comes off as the type of guy that if he had the Infinity Gauntlet, he would snap his fingers and make all the conservatives disappear. And that is a very unsettling thing. And there's evidence of this, by the way. So it's a bit unsettling when you actually look into it. But, you know, I'm here to talk about the Rant video and not the person themselves. I'll just move on. I'll give Lily Orchid's video between a 7 to a 6 out of 10 because the political part really drags the video down and it really takes away the seriousness of your video.
Nobody reached out to me and now I feel abandoned and sad is the exact kind of attitude the alt-right likes to gaslight people with in real life.
What, are you retarded?
Now on to the next video, Leia C's video, the Steven Universe critique, and I at first missed this video. This video would probably have to be the worst one out of all of them. Let me explain. Let me elaborate. Let me try to explain what I mean when I say that. This video could have been renamed The Defense of Steven Universe or In Defense of Steven Universe, because that's basically what this video is. This is Leia C, in a sense, trying to downplay some of the more serious issues of Steven Universe while at the same time critiquing it.
But we also have to put into consideration the short time span that the animators are forced to push episodes out. A lot of these problems we all nitpick to death could be solved if the animators were treated better and were given more time to complete and refine episodes.
If you don't know, Leia C is a massive fan of Steven Universe, and I mean massive fan. The whole channel is merely Steven Universe content. And Leia C makes certain arguments, like certain animation mistakes are a bit too nitpicky. You know, we shouldn't focus on the animation in certain degrees.
But things like small details, if you want stuff like that more fleshed out, blame the network on that, not the Crewniverse.
Are you fucking serious?
But Leia C, what you don't understand is that the animation has already been debated. Steven Universe has objectively bad animation.
So while it's not free of criticism on this subject, there's also the point you get to that the level of criticism is unreasonable given the facts and conditions.
Not to mention all the animation that's outright stolen. Like, if you want to defend Steven Universe's animation, that's a knee that you're gonna have to take. Like, there is no way in hell you can defend the animation. I don't know why Leia C would even try to defend the animation, since it's already been discussed and it's already been pretty much universally agreed upon that the animation is absolutely horrid. And the excuse of it I find to be a bit troubling, to say the least. That's something that, you know, if you want to defend Steven Universe, you shouldn't even try to debate that, because you will lose. Some other arguments that was made that is that Leia C defended Steven Universe's OST, which, you know, personally I don't care about the OST, but I think the statement that really caught my attention is that Leia C said Steven Universe's OST is some of the best OST that she has ever heard, and the only thing that even comes remotely close is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon.
And it's not an exaggeration when I say it's one of my favorite OSTs of all time, next to Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky. Steven Universe has some of the most beautiful sounding music that ranges from intense to relaxing, somehow always managing to match the mood of whatever is happening.
I disagree with the statement heavily, because there are so many OSTs better than Steven Universe OST, like Shin Megami Tensei OST, Ace Attorney OST, Xenoblade Chronicles OST, Yakuza Original and Yakuza Kiwami OST. There's just so many OSTs that is better than Steven Universe OSTs. Legend of Zelda OST is better. Now, if Leia C she said maybe the best OST that she's ever heard from a cartoon, maybe, just maybe, I can give some leeway on that because I don't focus on all the OST on cartoons. But she specifically compared it to a video game. So I'm going to do the exact same thing and name all the OSTs that are better than Steven Universe's OST. I mean, I even forgot to mention Persona. Don't even get me started on the Persona OST or even the Mega Man X OST if you want to go old school. I might even be able to make an argument that Undertale OST is better than Steven Universe OST. So I find it to be a bit funny that Leia C was pretty much saying that the Steven Universe OST is pretty much the best OST, and the only thing that comes remotely close is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. I found it to be just absolutely hysterical. But for the most part, if I had to sum up this video, it's to not be too harsh on Steven Universe. There's certain things that are wrong with Steven Universe. She still likes Steven Universe, which is very obvious despite all the problems that it has, and Leia C outright downplays some of the issues, like in terms of, you know, writing inconsistencies and characterization problems, or characterization that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like some of the behaviors of Steven and Pearl, and outright some of the Crystal Gems at times. And it's probably one of the main reasons why Leia C's video is not that popular, is because it's viewed in the lens of, you will go easy on the show because you are a fan of the show. You're not willing to risk actually criticizing the show for what it is. And as a result, you can't have people who actually want an actual fair, unbiased analysis to take you seriously, because they know already that you will have some sort of bias to the show because you like the show, and you will be as lenient as possible. The reason why Easy Peasy, Lily Orchid, E::R, and Robo Buddies, including my video, even my video has more views than your video and is taken more seriously than your video, is because we are individuals that have no problem taking the show apart and not holding back. Whether you were an ex-fan of the show or not, we brought up points that didn't go lenient on the show. We didn't go easy on the show just because we may or may not have liked the show. And that's why your video had so many problems, at least in my opinion. Like, I disagreed with at least 80% of your video because it was just too soft on Steven Universe. It was too safe. You weren't willing to, in reality, criticize Steven Universe like the title says. And it's really unfortunate because it's quite a missed opportunity. Maybe you could have brought something that could have been missed, but as a result of you really liking the show, you made a video that went easy on the show and didn't actually, in reality, criticize some of the more important elements of the show. In my opinion, this video was so bad that if I had seen this video before I had recorded my first video, you would have been in my first video, along with Awestruck Vox, aka The Roundtable, and Cartoon Universe. That's how bad this video was. This video basically boils down to some slight criticisms of Steven Universe.
However, I do think that part of this problem isn't the Crewniverse's fault at all. It's Cartoon Network's. The gaps in pacing seem a lot more horrible than what they actually are, and I think is what is leading people to get as agitated as they are. I mean, when we only get a few handful of episodes every year, we're going to want to see the plot-heavy episodes that give us answers opposed to the lighthearted towny episodes. I think that the network refusing to put the show on a consistent airing schedule is a huge agitator to this issue and makes the pacing feel so much worse than what it actually is. If you try watching the show from the start to the most recent episodes, a lot of the pacing issues become more tolerable and less painful even if they're still there. However, I also recommend rewatching the series for another reason, this time for something a little more positive. Something that I admire about the show is how the story completely changes everything by revealing Rose's pink diamond.
But in reality, it's a defense of Steven Universe. And my rating for this video is going to be between a 4 and a 3 out of 10. This was a really bad video because it's just too safe. It has too much kid gloves off. When you made this video, the kid gloves were on. You should have took off the kid gloves. You should have looked at the show objectively, and you should have tackled the show even if you like it. Even if you like it, you should have been honest, and you should have went after the show for what it really is. But instead of doing that, you decided to play it safe and pretty much go easy on the show in your quote-unquote critique, and it really destroyed the whole purpose of your video, and it's quite unfortunate. But your Steven Universe, I guess, rant or critique has to be one of the worst ones because of your inherent bias for liking the show, and it is really unfortunate that that's the case.
With all these things considered, I give Steven Universe the final rating of... box Box It. Box It is the highest rating that I can give to a cartoon on this show, and it means that it's something that's worth rewatching multiple times and getting on DVD to preserve forever. Steven Universe is such an important show regardless about how you feel about it. It's pushed societal norms and portrayed sensitive material to children and young adults in such a way that cartoons rarely ever do. This cartoon is clearly a staple in cartoon history, and I think that it has more than earned the Box It rating. It's had such a positive effect on so many people's lives, including my own, that I'm proud to say that it will always hold a special place in my heart, regardless of how old I get or what new cartoons come in later down the line.
And there are other Steven Universe videos out there, other Steven Universe rants, that talk about other aspects. Like I saw one recently that talked about how Garnet's future vision is inconsistent and how the episode pool hopping makes future vision worse. And I think that's what the video is actually called. And a few other videos that take apart Steven Universe as well. And I think all of them deserve a fair shake to be looked at and to be fairly assessed because, like I said before, and I'll say this again, Steven Universe has so many problems. No one living being in the entire universe can spot all the issues. So I recommend that you see other Steven Universe rant videos and try to see their viewpoint because there could be something that others like myself, E-R, Robo Buddies, and Lily missed. And even Easy Peasy, even things that he could have missed as well. So I think it's something to be looked at. And before I move on to the next section, there's something I almost forgot to mention, and I think I should. I vehemently disagree with Easy Peasy's opinion on the whole child porn drawings of Rebecca Sugar.
Look, I'm not trying to imply that Rebecca Sugar is a pedophile. Wait, no, that's exactly what I'm trying to imply. Rebecca Sugar is a fucking pedophile. As I already mentioned, Rebecca Sugar used to draw a lot of porn, most of which has now been deleted, but some of which still lingers on. Porn of Ratatouille, porn of some show I don't recognize but involves animals, making this furry porn, porn of Mystery Science Theater 3000, which I am unable to find, but must be really awkward now that she's been hired to help with the awful new revival of the show, and probably a lot more. But most importantly, she used to draw child porn, involving Ed, Edd, and Eddy.
I do not believe that drawings can be considered child porn as a drawing. Child porn is the sexual abuse of real children. These are fictional characters, and Easy Peasy did focus on the Ed, Edd, and Eddy not safe for work drawings, and I do believe for freedom of expression's sake that Rebecca Sugar has the right to draw those images. I don't believe that she should have taken them down. I don't believe that she should have been criticized for them because it's just art. The same argument was brought up against Lolicon and Shotokan on Gab recently, with Andrew Torba pretty much saying that it was degenerate and therefore it should be banned and that it's equivalent to child porn, even though it's just a drawing. And I spoke against Andrew Torba as a result of this, and I told him that he was being pretty much a retard. So for the sake of consistency, if I would defend something like Lolicon and Shotokan to exist because they're drawings and they're fictional characters and there's no child harm, I must also defend Rebecca Sugar's right to draw Lolicon and Shotokan, or in this case, not safe for work images of underage cartoon characters, because at the end of the day, it's fictitious, it's not real. And I would assume that Rebecca Sugar is putting it under some type of not safe for work tab to stop it from being visible to children. And I believe if we start ostracizing not safe for work content of underage characters, we set a dangerous precedent to be done with the same thing with video games when it comes to violence and other mediums, including movies and comics and so on and so forth. And I don't think that's a precedent that anyone wants to set. So for the sake of consistency and for the sake of freedom of expression, I will defend Rebecca Sugar's freedom of expression for drawing not safe for work drawings of cartoon characters, whether they be underage or not. So that's just the point I wanted to get across before I end off this section.
I'm going to draw two girls, and they're going to be fucking. And I'm going to write on top of it, age 14 and age 13. Okay, so we've just identified that these are two girls having sex. One of the girls are 14, the other one is 13. Like I said, I'm not going to show this drawing to you because it'll take too long. However, is that literal child pornography? Now it's a matter of quality, isn't it? It's not a matter of intention or of its existence, it's quality. That is now the distinction of whether something is literal child pornography or it's my bullshit drawing on a notepad.
Look at niggers, they're trying to raise money, but they can't cause they spend all their money. They're niggers and they're so fucking niggers. I hate them!
その間、鍵穴に目を近づけるのはいけないことでしょうか。
Nice!
Now on to another section that I did mention in my last video, but I didn't go in depth with, and that is bringing up the fact of Steventards. And if you don't remember what a Steventard is, a Steventard is basically a hardcore fan of Steven Universe that will defend the show to the death, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how many plot holes pop up, no matter how badly the messages and the themes of the show are portrayed, no matter how bad the characters act for no reason, no matter how crazy and uninspired the animation gets, they will defend the show as the best thing since sliced bread because of emotion, or because of progressive reasons, or socio-political reasons. And this word's origin is from the legendary Narutard, which are, basically the same thing but with Naruto. And a lot of, Steventards got really pissed off at my video for very obvious reasons, because obviously, one, I'm calling out Steven Universe for being just a terrible fucking show in nearly every single category, with maybe the exception being characterization, maybe, and that's a big maybe. But overall, it's just a terrible show when you actually weigh it under its own merit. And I find it to be a bit hilarious because the majority of Steventards don't even disagree with me. They really don't, but will give me like shitty excuses and just waves upon waves of either false information or assumptions in order to say that, Steven Universe is a good show, that this thing is not a plot hole or this thing is not a retcon, even though it is, and even though I have evidence, and even though I've shown that it was. Just petty things like, oh, you didn't put the timestamps in, so I can't, watch your video. Just petty bullshit. And there were also, a few, response videos, not to my video specifically, but to Steven Universe quote-unquote hate videos in general. You had the Cartoon Universe's video, Steven Universe Isn't Garbage, which is a fucking terrible video. And I find it to be kind of ironic because Cartoon Universe was literally one of the Steventards that I called out in my last video. I said he was a Steventard, and surprise, surprise, he did exactly what I thought he was going to do and defend the show. And it's hilarious because his video could be basically summed up to Steven Universe isn't garbage because it makes you emotionally feel good. I won't talk about the politics, even though it's probably one of the things I can actually get you on, because I don't want to talk about politics, which is fair because I understand why he doesn't want to do that. That's perfectly fair. I pardon you on that. Nobody really wants to get into the political discussion, so I understand why you didn't do it, even though it was pretty much probably the only thing you could hammer Lily Orchid on. But Cartoon Universe's video is just basically, Steven Universe is not a bad show. It has some tender moments, and you should watch the show. Rebecca Sugar's not a bad person. That's Cartoon Universe's video basically sums up to, and it's basically a 14-minute response to a 2-hour video, and that's the best he could do. That's the best Cartoon Universe could do to defend the show. Cartoon Universe didn't even disagree with any of Lily's points. That was the most hilarious shit about it. Cartoon Universe didn't even disagree with any of the core points, and it's fucking hilarious. It is a video that I recommend must be seen, because it's pretty much the Steven Universe fandom grasping at straws to defend their sinking ship of a show, and I enjoyed every second of it. And I hope Cartoon Universe makes more response videos defending Steven Universe. I really do, because I would really enjoy watching them. And I almost forgot about the Roundtable, aka Awestruck Vox. I mean, I already mentioned him in my last video and just the absolute ridiculousness that he does to defend the show, including making numerous theory videos on just one episode, some not even making any sense, some clearly to appease to the fan base. Just the absolute ridiculousness that comes from this dude is just unbelievable. It is...
Yo, let's go! Let's go! Yo, yes, yes, yes! Levis! Baby girl! Mwah! Baby girl! Baby girl! You back in the game!
Talk about back to the barn.
Yo! Yeah!
They just pulled a Wizard of Oz.
What a fucking nigger. Jeez, oh my god, what the fuck? Sorry, but what the fuck?
So wait.
Yo! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Damn straight! Damn straight! Let's go! Let's go! Yo! 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 It's on our side! Yo! Yo!
Nigger!
They brought out the motherfucking cluster! Cluster!
No, I'm out. Keep going, dude. Fuck that nigga. Oh, my lord. I hate him. I hate him.
It's like a phenomenon. It's like a once-in-a-lifetime event that you would probably never see again in your lifetime. Like, it's good to watch and examine the thought process of Awestruck Vox and trying to figure out what's going on in the guy's head. And literally holding up Steven Universe to such a ridiculous standard, despite it having so many problems. Like, boy, I will just come out and say I do not like Awestruck Vox. He comes off as a snake oil salesman. He comes off as someone trying to sell Steven Universe for personal reasons, even going as far as going after other people. It is absolutely fucking ridiculous. Out of all the channels I've seen, I would have to say the Roundtable is the absolute fucking worst and probably the most Steven-tarded channel on YouTube or any platform right now. And it is absolutely fucking insane.
Oh, hey, Rebecca, just the person I want to see. So, I just got the phone corporate, and they actually saw some Steven Universe rant videos on YouTube, and those videos say you're the reason why the show is always on hiatus, that you're not working hard enough, and my understanding was always that the network controlled when the episodes aired, but, I mean, this video has like 1 million views, so I guess I believe them. So if you could just, you know, work on the episodes and get them out, that'd be great. People aren't happy. Anyways, love you, Shugs. Bye.
Get the fuck out of here.
It's like a car crash. It's hard to watch, but you can't look away. It's like watching a car get hit with a fucking train. It's intense, it's interesting, but you know, and it's horrible, but you just can't look away. And that's pretty much the Roundtable in a nutshell. A walking, talking, living car crash. And it's really interesting to see someone hold a cartoon to such a high standard. It really is. Especially when that said cartoon has so many fucking problems that you could literally create entire novels on the thing. And then there's Leia C's video, which I wouldn't say is a response video, but obvious from the title, it's meant to give some deflection away from Lily's video, and it's called Steven Universe Changed My Life and Here's Why. And it's obviously another fucking failed attempt to defend Steven Universe.
An interesting fact was that I was always super annoyed when the show came on because I found it annoying. I know I've mentioned this previously in a live stream or two, but the reason I disliked the show when it had first started airing wasn't actually its fault. It was Cartoon Network's advertising department.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
I can't really talk much about this video without seeming like a complete and total asshole, but to sum up this video is basically Leia C inserting her personal life into Steven Universe to drum up some emotion to why Steven Universe is a good show. And I think it's kind of hilarious because earlier in this video I made a statement that Steven Universe's true audience is angsty teens with problems and adults. And guess what Leia C is?
Since I was a small child, I've always had major anxiety disorders and a host of other mental health issues.
Oh, is that right? Well, I sure hope somebody picks up that phone, because I f***ing called it!
That's right, a teen that was suffering through problems and an adult now that formed an emotional attachment to Steven Universe. So I find it kind of interesting. So it actually makes sense why Leia C is a fan of Steven Universe, because she is the target audience for Steven Universe. Leia C is the target audience for Steven Universe. Like, Steven Universe is made for people like Leia C, and this video shows that to be the case. So it makes so much sense why Leia C is willing to defend Steven Universe to the death. It makes so much sense why Leia C made such a terrible, I guess you can call it it a rant video. I mean, I wouldn't call it that, but I guess you can call it that. And it makes so much sense why Leia C is a Steven-tard. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. Now on to the Twitter backlash against YouTube for Steven Universe rants being too popular. Because allegedly, if you search Steven Universe on YouTube, the first videos you get are the rant videos. And one of those videos are Lily Orchid's video and my video. And a lot of Steven-tards on Twitter were getting really fucking pissed. I mean, the anger was on a whole nother level. Like, the Steven Universe fandom was willing to blame as many people as possible for the Steven Universe rants being so popular, for the Steven Universe rants being in the algorithm and it getting recommended to them constantly. And it was Lily Orchid's video and my video that got recommended to them constantly. And they were just fucking livid. Like, they just couldn't believe such a thing could even exist. A Steven Universe rant that's over 2 hours long, that's constantly being recommended to them, even though they love the show. Just heresy. That's blasphemy. You know, Lily and me should be burned at the fucking stake for even daring to create a rant video on the perfect show that is Steven Universe. How dare we insult the false messiah that is Steven Universe and say that Steven Universe as a show is absolute garbage? How dare we? And the Steven Universe fandom was trying to get the cartoon community involved. The Steven Universe fandom was trying to get YouTube involved. The Steven Universe fandom was trying to get Rebecca Sugar involved and the Cooniverse involved. It was pure pandemonium, and it was great to watch the fire. It was amazing. It was just so ridiculous. And the best part, at least with my video, is that there was no hardcore arguments against anything that I said. I think unanimously, even the hardcore fans of Steven Universe, even though they don't want to admit it, agree with everything that I said. Even though they don't want to admit it, I think they agree with every fucking thing I said, and it is beautiful. Because my goal in my video was to be objective as possible and point out as many problems with the show as possible. And I think to a certain degree, in their heart of hearts, they agree with everything I said, and it's killing them inside. Because to some degree, they have to realize that their show is garbage, and it's only going to get worse as time goes along. And it's just slowly eating them inside, like a chest burster from Aliens. It's just hilarious to watch. But let's get on to the Reddit backlash. And I will focus on mine specifically, because there was a huge Reddit backlash for Steven Universe rants. But let's start off with mine. Apparently, looking at the Reddit posts around my Steven Universe rants specifically, nobody wanted to deal with it. If you go on the Reddit, you literally see people avoiding my video at all costs, like it's the plague. Only one person in that entire Reddit post actually watched my video. And even they had to admit that I brought up some good points, while everyone else on the Reddit post just completely ignored my video because they just couldn't watch it. It was just too much. And with Lily's video being another catalyst on top of that, they just couldn't handle it. Like, the Steven Universe fandom was collapsing. It got so bad that on Reddit, another post was created telling people to stop posting Steven Universe rants in the subreddit. It got that bad. It was so bad that the fandom was spurting out about Steven Universe rants being even posted in the subreddit for discussion and for deconstruction. Like, how dare you post dissenting opinions on my subreddit? It was just holier than thou behavior, and it was hilarious. And what the Steven Universe fandom doesn't understand is that you're not going to just stop dissenting opinion. You have to actually tackle these problems head on. That's how you determine what is a good show and what is a bad show. That's how you determine if you truly are a fan of something. You will look at the dissenting opinions, and you will look at the arguments, and you will make your own arguments, and I guarantee if you have good arguments to combat the other arguments, it will only validate your feelings for the show. But the fact that the fandom isn't even willing to even watch the videos, the fact that they're not even willing to even discuss the issues with the show, truly shows that to some degree, the Steven Universe fandom understands that their show is falling apart, and there's nothing they can do about it, because there's just so many problems that not even one video could even talk about all of them. It really shows how big of a fans they are of the show. It really shows how much they really care about the show, where they can't even handle or even discuss dissenting opinion on the show that they apparently care so much about. And in Lily's Reddit post, or not really Lily's Reddit post, but the Reddit post discussing Lily's video, they pretty much bring up kind of the same points that I brought up, that half of the video was a bit ridiculous, while at the same time kind of ignoring the actual arguments and bringing up, past things, past political discretions of Lily, which are not important for this video. I'm not going to even get into it. It's not on topic. It's off topic. But it's the same deflection. It's the same deflection that all all, if not most, Steven Universe rants go through. Despite the evidence, despite the statements, despite the claims, the Steven Tards will continue to defend the show at all costs, no matter how bad it gets. And at this point, it's like watching a house burn down at this point. It's like watching a house burn down, and the fire department can't get to it fast enough. And I find it to be really interesting. Now on to an actual response video that was made to my video, specifically by, I guess, Annie Entertainment or A-N-Y Entertainment. I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced, but this channel made a response video to my video. And let's just say it's a terrible response. I mean, the response is so bad, I can't even call it a response. What I can call it is clickbait, but not a response. Especially since in the title, they talk about Steven Universe Rant videos, while one only discussing my video and not really discussing it. But let me elaborate what I mean. Around 45 minutes into the podcast, because it is a podcast to a certain degree, my video comes up in discussion, and it is brought up by the person who has a My Little Pony avatar, and she pretty much brings up the fact that my video exists.
Somebody did like a 2-hour rant as to why Steven Universe is shit.
Yeah, that's
and
what we're referencing.
Yeah. Oh no, and it was no, it's not the one you're thinking. It's someone else. And
oh really? It's not that one.
No, it's not that one. It was another one. And all it was just listing all of the issues with the show.
Oh,
there
was that the Robo Buddies one?
No, not the Robo Buddies. I don't know which one it was. It's not.
Okay,
it came out. It came out before that one. Before
that one.
Okay,
before that one.
I have a Lily Orchard. I have an Ease Peas. I have a Jackie Boys. I have a Shariffles production.
Let me see. I could probably go through my history real quick because I know I saw it. It was like I sat through like a good 30 minutes of it just because I was like, okay, you know what? Let's see. I like hearing people's critiques. All he did was go through and just basically say, this happened, this wasn't continuity. This happened, this wasn't continuity. This happened, and I'm just like, are you not giving me any kind of fucking substance? And I was just like, you know what? I get being critical of shows, you know, I totally understand that, but then you also have to get to a point with the show where you're just like, I just like it. Yeah, you know what? It's not perfect. There are problems. I get it, but I like it. So who the fuck cares? Like
the one that's like continuity. It's like, well, what continuity problems really are there, Steven? Just saying, like, I don't know, but still, it's the point of. Yeah, be critical of shows. I mean, people could probably hear me right.
And she admits on the podcast that she didn't watch my entire video, by the way. She only watched the first 30 minutes. And this is where the hilarity ensues. She was complaining that the fact that I named the problems in lists, which is obvious because it's the Rant documentary. I was trying to be as objective as possible. But don't worry, this video has substance, so you don't have to worry about that. This video has lots of substance for you. And 2, I didn't post any timestamps, which, you know, I mean, you watch my video, you watch the whole thing. If you want a timestamp, go to someone else for it. You watch the entire video.
Oof. This is a 2-hour video. Somebody was committed to their Elia the Auraman, obviously.
I mean, down in the description. It was the quality production was very well put together. Like, don't get me wrong. Like that was he split it up into parts, and like it was the overall video was very well done. But I was just sitting there like,
I could watch 4 hours of 4 episodes of Steven Universe in this time.
So I stopped. I think I only got about 30 minutes in, and there's a comment in the comment section that has the timestamps. He didn't put the timestamps in the description, so I had to go find it. But
I love it when they don't do that.
I don't like when they do that. Like and you know what? Certain media shouldn't have the timestamps. Like if it's like a radio player or something like that, obviously you're not going to have the timestamps for that. But
there we go.
Yeah, but those are all the timestamps. Like I said, it was very well put together in the sense of production-wise. Like you can tell he really put his heart and soul into that. But it was just the argument seemed it was just a list, and I don't like when people just give lists of that kind of stuff. Like I want some kind of substance, like maybe a little bit of analysis.
So I feel like I have to bring this up because it becomes very important later on. And the third thing, and this, I will admit, this really got under my skin. This really, really, really pissed me the fuck off because it's another argument that was used against me that is disingenuous and not fair. The person with the My Little Pony avatar brought up the fact that I stated that Ruby and Sapphire characters were inconsistent during their wedding, and that I mentioned that Ruby should have been wearing the suit and Sapphire should have been wearing the dress instead of vice versa, based based on their characters.
And then he went on a tangent about how, I guess, well, spoilers, if you haven't seen Steven Universe, the part where Ruby and Sapphire are getting married, and Ruby's in the dress and Sapphire's in the tux, and apparently that was a big, like, he brought it up as one of the issues of the story, and I was just like, okay. I mean, like, I understand, like, Ruby's the quote unquote boy, or the masculine one. Yeah, Butch. She's the Butch. But I don't know. I just enjoy shit. Like, that's why I just, like, I can't, because I used to do reviews. I did reviews a really long time ago. I used to do, like, game reviews and stuff like that. I don't do that stuff anymore because I got to a point where I couldn't enjoy the media anymore because I was being too critical. So I'm just like,
I have to admit I know this feeling by now.
She looked so cute in that dress too. She was so adorable.
I heard that the reason why they put Ruby in the dress was that it was the fuck you to the censorship that was going on overseas, because everybody because Ruby's the guy when they do the dub overs. They make Ruby a male VA. And if I was mistaken, they put her in the dress for that reason alone, as the fuck you to the censorships.
It's a perfect fuck you.
That is a perfect fuck you.
And for some reason, this person, in a sense, kind of, I don't want to say strawman my argument. This person completely ignored what my argument was and turned it into something else. You can tell by the faces and the silence of the podcast, some dark connotations was ensuing by the statement alone. Like they were trying to say that I was a homophobe or something for even mentioning that I thought it was inconsistent that Ruby was wearing the dress and Sapphire was wearing the suit when it should have been the other way around based on their personality. Because Ruby is the more masculine one. That is a fact. Sapphire is the more feminine one. That is a fact. If you look at them, Sapphire wears dresses. Ruby wears more of suits or wears more of kind of like boyish gear. Ruby does look like the boy. Sapphire does look like the girl in the relationship. Ruby does take charge. And hell, Ruby is the one that even proposed. So I thought it was inconsistent, and that's my real argument. My argument was a point of consistency, not a point of homosexuality. But in the podcast, it's kind of implied that my argument was in terms of homosexuality, and the person even states that I went on a tangent when this is not true. I didn't go on a tangent, I just simply stated it was inconsistent. So this is a complete misrepresentation of what my argument was, and I was legitimately upset. I was legitimately upset because the only video that could actually give me any criticism, any valid criticism on my actual arguments was just straight up mischaracterized, which makes me think, what was the whole fucking point of me even bringing up consistency if consistency doesn't matter? And we had a slew of people saying, oh, it doesn't matter, they did it to piss off Russia, which, I mean, you know, I'm against censorship as much as the next guy, but what is stopping Russia from censoring the entire episode? You think Russia gives a fuck about Steven Universe? Someone left a comment that said that the Middle East straight up banned Steven Universe. What's stopping Russia from doing the same thing? You think that Steven Universe is that good of a show to where it's going to start an uprising because they took it away due to potential homosexual propaganda? And I'm not going to say that it's homosexual propaganda, that's just how the Russians view it. So I find it to be a little bit disappointing that my argument was misinterpreted, that my argument was turned into something else that I wasn't even trying to imply. Because I don't care about homosexuality, I don't give a shit. My problems with Steven Universe are purely merit-based, nothing more, nothing less. And anyone trying to assert anything more than that is insulting my intelligence with how I approach the show. I mean, you even let your friend, who is the girl on the side, which would be on the right, make a fool of herself. Because she made a statement that Steven Universe doesn't have any continuity issues.
The one that's like continuity, it's like, well, what continuity problems really are there in Steven? Just saying, like...
Uh-oh, retard alert!
And the lady on the left didn't correct her friend because this is demonstrably false. If you indeed watch the first 30 minutes of my video, the first 30 minutes is of me talking about the continuity issues in Steven Universe. And I hit it on the money for the most part. Everything I said in terms of continuity issues are right. So I find it to be unbelievable that you let your friend make an absolute fucking fool of herself by saying that there's no continuity issues in Steven Universe, where I literally, in the first 30 minutes that you claim that you've watched, I point out the continuity issues in Steven Universe. And then they give the deflection of, oh, if you hate something that much, don't watch it. Trust me, if I could drop this series, I could. But unfortunately, I made a deal with the devil and I had to watch up to 5 seasons of it. I didn't really have a choice in the matter, but I kept my promise and I met my requirement of making a rant on Steven Universe. And this one is just pleasure onto the pain that I had to deal with. And for the, I would assume, German guy, since you're curious, it did take a lot of dedication to make the video. It really did. And I am a little bit disappointed that you couldn't really discuss my arguments and that no one else really watched the video except for the person with the My Little Pony avatar. It's really unfortunate because I was actually looking forward to hearing some actual valid criticism towards my arguments. But instead, it was just, denial. It was just, it's too long. Steven Universe doesn't have any continuity issues, even though it does. It is the kind of implication that I'm talking about homosexuality instead of consistency. It is the deflection that, oh, if Steven Universe is so bad, you should just ignore it. It's just madness. And I'm really disappointed. You didn't even mention the fact of what type of channel I was compared to the last guy that you guys talked about. I'm not a cartoon channel. This is not something I do. This is a promise that I had to keep, and I kept my promise. I am a manga/comic book channel, and I am true to that. The only reason this video exists is because I am a man of my word, and I've had a problem with Steven Universe since the very beginning. I wanted to drop Steven Universe ever since season 2. The fact that I even got this far is impressive. I mean, I binge watched the series like fucking twice to make that video, and to see that the majority of people just deflected it just because, it's a bit disappointing. But yeah, that's my view on Annie or A&Y Entertainment for their response to my video. Very, very disappointing. I'm really disappointed with your response to my video, and you should do a better job next time if you decide to actually make a real response, or if you decide to make a response to this video, or maybe both. I don't care. Whatever you do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Disgusting!
State-enforced homosexuality.
Nigger and niggers don't know how to do anything without chicken.
Now on to the next section of my video, discussing the cartoon community. Now in my last video, I kind of only vaguely mentioned the cartoon community, and it was just kind of me saying it was a straight up dumpster fire and how it's completely falling apart because cartoons in the West are getting objectively worse as time goes on, to the point where Steven Universe is probably the best cartoon on Cartoon Network right now, if not one of the best, which is kind of sad. And I wanted to bring up the fact that the cartoon community, as small and as unpopular as a community that it is extremely incompetent. The cartoon community is really, really, really incompetent, to the point where some cartoon reviewers will defend Thundercats Roar, to the point where some people will defend She-Ra, to the point where they're defending just really, really bad cartoons that on merit doesn't even fit the minimum standard. Like, it didn't take me that long to figure out that Steven Universe was going to hit a brick wall, but it's taking these fuckers up to season 5 to figure this shit out, and that's by simply ignoring the clear problems. It's so bad to where other communities, like the comic book community, had to call the cartoon community out on their shit, like in Civilized Elk, for example, on actually debating an artist on the female form. Just absolute madness. Absolute fucking madness. And it's funny because, the community that I'm a part of, because I actually watched the original She-Ra, was absolutely right. The new She-Ra, although I would say overall it's okay, I wouldn't watch season 2. It's really bad. It suffers similar, if not the same problems as Steven Universe. It's really fucking bad. It has pacing issues, it has animation issues, and when you actually think about the plot, the show's not taken seriously. And because I'm an actual honest actor, I've had requests in private and in public to do a video on She-Ra. Now, I'm probably not going to do it because, like I said before, I'm not a cartoon channel. I'd rather stick to the scope of what I actually like to do instead of bashing my head against the wall because another community is so fucking incompetent and can't do its shit right. It's just unbelievable. I mean, if you look at the cartoon community channels, they have videos that aren't interesting. Some of them talking about old topics. Most of your videos aren't interesting. I mean, there's so many interesting cartoons out there that I can name off the top of my head. 3 Delivery, Iron Man Armored Avengers, American Dragon, the first part, and comparing it to the second part with the huge animation and art style change. Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go, Yin Yang Yo, Secret Saturdays, that's a cartoon that's been ignored, and so on and so forth. Like, there are plenty other cartoons that can be talked about and that you guys can make interesting videos about. But it seems like the cartoon community is somewhat stagnant in what type of videos they make. Even going as far as to talk about the same thing over and over, whether it be Steven Universe, Teen Titans Go, some old cartoon cartoon, like the Fairly Odd Parents or some shit, instead of other interesting cartoons like the League of Super Evil. Does any cartoon reviewer remember the League of Super Evil? What about comparing the changes in animation within the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles over the years? What about the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon? How about talking about that? That could be a very interesting topic. And just other cartoons that have been swept to the wayside that has never been talked about. What about that? But instead, I see the same generic, boring content coming out of the cartoon community that's not interesting. I would have to say the most interesting cartoon reviewer that I actually have seen is Mr. Enter. And that's not exactly a compliment. That's not a good thing. So it's very disappointing to see that the state of Western animation and cartoons is so bad that there's really nothing interesting that the cartoon community could talk about, despite how small it is. Your community being small should be a very good advantage to you, because you're able to talk about things and get a lot of popularity because your community is so niche. But now let's talk about why your community is so niche. Because cartoons in the current generation has taken a huge downgrade. Let's see some of the cartoons that have absolutely failed. You have the Ben 10 reboot, which made me want to kill myself because I'm a huge fan of Ben 10. You have the Powerpuff Girls reboot, which is god-awful, and I actually was a fan of the original Powerpuff Girls. You have Steven Universe, which is terrible. Gumball's okay. You have We Bare Bears, which for me is boring. It's another Slice of Life show. You have Cricket the Creek, which is also boring. You have OKKO, which has terrible art style, to some degree terrible animation. I haven't really watched the show because the animation and the art style is so atrocious. I just can't stomach it. I can't look at it and take it seriously. Kind of like reading Mob Psycho 100. I can't take it seriously. You know, Teen Titans Go, which has consumed the majority of Cartoon Network, and so on and so forth. This is not a good look. This is not a good look. And then you have animes coming out that are more interesting. Even something as crazy as something like Zombieland, or hell, even Citrus. The Yuri anime was more interesting, and so on and so forth. A lot more interesting, very crazy animes coming out that is more interesting, better animated, and more appealing to viewers, anything that is out in Western animation right now. And I'm gonna tell you this, if you guys don't start getting serious, and soon, your community is going to become obsolete. Your asses are going to get BTFO'd by fucking anime channels and manga channels like mine, because nobody's going to be watching cartoons for too long, because there's not many good cartoons to watch to begin with. There's only like maybe a few convince people to watch, but the overwhelming majority of Western animated cartoons aren't good compared to the Far East animated cartoons, or in this case anime. The Far East is still producing anime at a reasonable pace and a reasonable schedule that is more interesting and that has better production value. And if the cartoon community, if you guys don't start shaping up and start making interesting content and in a sense adding some pressure to the cartoon industry in the West, your asses are going to get BTFO'd into outer space at some point. Because right now, the state of Western animation does not look good. It is so bad to where YouTube animations are more preferred than actual Western animation that's on television. That's not good. That is not good. Your community is slowly but surely falling apart. And apparently nobody wants to pick up the scraps. Nobody wants to actually have a serious discussion about it. And some people will even go as far as defending the bullshit. Like the whole She-Ra situation. The bullshit. Some people will even go as far as defending the bullshit, no matter how much evidence come out. And saying this from a community that is somewhat collapsed, and that being the comic book community, and seeing what has happened there, I am warning you, if you fuckers don't get serious, your community will collapse too. And you'll start turning into weebs, or your audience will turn into weebs real soon. Your normie audience will become an anime audience, or become a manga audience, and they will be coming to people like me to tell them the truth and not feed them bullshit and not feed them snake oil when it comes to talking about the quality of products. But yeah, my opinion of the cartoon community as a whole, right now, it is like a chicken with its head cut off. It is running around not knowing what the fuck to do. It is like a deer caught in the headlights. It doesn't know what to do. It is stagnant, it is stale, it is dry, it is uninteresting, and it will eventually be doomed. And I know there are a few good cartoons out there. There are a few. You have Voltron, and I'm pretty sure you have some others too. I haven't watched Hilda, so I can't give an opinion on that, but they're out there. You know, actually try your best to bring up your community and stop being so goddamn stagnant and uninteresting. Like, bring yourselves up before your community fades off into fucking dust, before your community fades out of existence. But that's all I have to say about the cartoon community. There's a lot that needs to be done. You guys need someone to whip you guys into shape. There needs to be a cartoon reviewer that's going to get the wheels moving. There needs to be a cartoon reviewer that's going to make cartoons becomes more interesting for the West, because right now it doesn't exist. Mars Reviews was right. He was absolutely right. And ever since he made his video about the cartoon community, nothing has changed in my opinion. The cartoon community is still in the same situation as it was when he made his video. It's still in the same fucking place, and it is not looking good for you guys, because cartoons aren't that favorable. Cartoons are becoming less and less popular as time goes on, because the quality and the expectations are going to shit. And as cartoon reviewers, to some degree, it's your responsibility to let your audience know what is a good quality cartoon and what isn't. Because if you guys are just going to be taking in any shit that comes your way and saying, oh, it has some good points, therefore it's good, like Steven Universe, you are doomed. You are fucked. You are screwed. Because they'll be coming to people like me that won't feed them bullshit and will point out the flaws with the shows and fairly determine what is a bad cartoon and what is a good cartoon. And I'm not a cartoon reviewer, nor do I want to be. Don't make me be one. Don't make me come into your community and slap you all into shape, because I really don't want to do that. I'm the last person that wants to do that. At this point, I believe that the cartoon community has to collapse in order for something better to be built. And the same thing applies to most Western communities. They have to kind of fall apart for something good to be built again. It's just really, really disappointing.
Like, you are acting like a bunch of niggers, just so you know. You act like white niggers.
Niggers like watermelon and chicken nuggets!
Now on to the next segment of my video, which will be the Jewish question. The question that we've all been waiting for, and that is, are Jews a race? The answer is no. From the research I've done, and I've done this like 3 times, the overwhelming majority seems to agree that Jew is not a race.
Baruch atah Adonai. I want fancy things like my friend Ephraim. I want the newest 10-speed bicycle that I will ride once, but then I will call my parents and have them come get me. I want to swim in the pool, but only with my shirt on. I want to lose my virginity at 24, but tell everyone I was 16.
Even the one person that linked me to a source, which was Wikipedia, about Jews, nowhere in that Wikipedia did it ever claim that Jews were a race, which I find to be kind of funny, because they're making the claim that Jew is a race. And one of them even brought up a court case, which a lot of Jews disagreed with, which I found to be hilarious. Now, I did see some sources that talked about some genetic difference between Jews and other races, but I think it's falling within the scope of the current concept of race, or the new age belief of race, where it's to the point where race is becoming so broad to where at some point everybody's going to become their own race due to slight genetic differences. Because I believe in the old metric for race, which is, you know, Caucasoid, Negroid, and Mongoloid, you know, white, black, Asian. And then there's subcategories like Australoid and Capoid and so on and so forth. But I like to focus on the 3 main categories. At least that's what I was taught in school, of how race is determined. And I will agree it's a bit archaic, but it's simple and clean, and it's not as complex as the new agey definition of what race is, which is becoming basically a hodgepodge of everybody's their own race if they look just slightly different or they have some gene that's slightly different, which is what race is becoming. And to some degree I understand that, but to me it just seems like an overcomplication of race. It seems like it's a concept that's becoming way too complex and will eventually be rendered meaningless, because at some point everybody's going to become their own race and it's going to defeat the whole purpose. Like at some point I feel like it's going to go around the realm that, oh, South Koreans and Japanese and Chinese have slight facial differences and they have slight differences in genes, so therefore they're their own race. So we're going to have the Japanese turn into the Japanese race and the Chinese turn into the Chinese race. And oh, Africans have sickle cell, so they're going to become the African race. And I don't want, I think that would be ridiculous. I mean, overall, when it comes to the concept of race, I don't really give a shit, but I think it's kind of a ridiculous thing that's kind of happening with the discussion of race. And there were a few arguments for that, like, oh, well, Jews have, you know, Jew frozen stuff, so therefore they magically become their own race because they have a slight genetic difference. That's like equivalent of me saying that, oh, well, you know, there's some people that are blonde, there's some people that are brunette, and there's some people that are redheads, so therefore they're their own race. It's really ridiculous arguments. And I will agree that Jews are ethnicity, and I will agree that they are, to some degree, an ethno-religious group, but as a race, I wouldn't say Jews are a race. Because when you say things like that, you create things like the question of, are Jews white? And I don't want to be a part of that question. I really don't. I really don't care about race that much to want to actually dive into that.
Don't suppose it would help to say I have a note from my doctor? Get in there, you.
So I'm gonna pretty much end it off by saying this. I don't believe Jews are a race. I believe that they are an ethno-religious group. I do believe that they are ethnicity. I do believe they're an ethnicity, but I do not believe they're a race. I do believe that they're a religion. I will even go as far as saying is I believe they're a culture, but I will not say that they're a race. Because I have some friends that are Jewish, and honestly, I can't tell the difference between them and my other friends who are white and that are not Jewish. So I couldn't really find any concrete, hardcore evidence that Jew was a race other than, personal statements and stuff like that. Like, I would not consider Jews a race. I would consider them a group, an ethno-religious group, a community, a culture, whatever you want to say. But a race, no. I don't believe Jews are a race. Based on the evidence that I've seen in actually meeting and actually knowing and actually talking to real Jews, I don't believe they're a race.
To talk about Judaism. So where do they think they go when they die?
Well, you should try asking the rabbi. Although I should warn you, you might not get an answer.
So where do Jewish people think they go when they die?
Where do you think we go?
Well, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Why do you think you're asking all these questions?
I just really want to know what happens.
Do you think that's part of God's infinite plan?
I think your whole religion is a sham just so you can get extra holidays off from work.
Oh, gotta go. It's Buchwach.
Niggers are so stupid and they're niggers! Wow, wow!
So I'm going to give my final thoughts on Steven Universe. Steven Universe has a lot of problems. I mean, just ridiculous amounts of problems. I mean, you'll have someone like Leia C compare Steven Universe to Teen Titans Go, low-hanging fruit, instead of comparing it to, actually good cartoons like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Static Shock, or any of the other good cartoons like, hell, even Generator X, Ben 10, Symbiotic Titan, so on and so forth, in terms of animation, and just deflect from a lot of issues.
Teen Titans Go utilizes cheap puppet flash animation, so the animators can't really go off model, and it's a lot harder to make mistakes, and it's why they can make so many episodes of the show with minimal effort and cost. Steven Universe, on the other hand, is traditionally hand animated, then gone over digitally. This raises production costs and overall time taken and the complexity of the animation. That's why in this case it isn't fair to compare it with Teen Titans Go animation consistency, since they're two entirely different kinds of animation.
And I said this before, and I'll say this again. Steven Universe has a lot of problems in terms of the main categories that I consider to be a good cartoon, which is writing, which is characterization, and animation. And those devolve into subcategories of their own. But the most important thing I want to focus on, and that I try to focus on in my original video, is I have a philosophy. Good writing can make or break any series. If the writing is not solid, if the writing is not good, your series, no matter how well animated, no matter how well the characterization is, which it won't be good because characterization somewhat leans on writing, will completely fall apart. And that reigns true because I've seen it with products that are better than Steven Universe. So the fact that the fandom is willing to ignore such big issues until they actually become plot holes and they actually destroy the series is a bit troubling. It's a bit disturbing. And I don't understand. Well, I do understand, but it's not a good idea to have such an attachment to a show, especially since one of the main arguments is that it's a kid's show and it shouldn't be taken seriously. Well, I believe that kids deserve good cartoons too, because when I was growing up, I had good cartoons, and I had anime, which I would consider good cartoons or good products to watch. And anime really set the bar of what I determined to be a good cartoon. But not all, animated works that I like with cartoons. I have some things that I like, that, Samurai Jack, Powerpuff Girls, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Symbiotic Titans, Secret Saturdays, The Years Within 10, Justice League Unlimited, Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, G.I. Joe American Hero. You have good things like the Magic School Bus. And I find it to be ridiculous that people are arguing that, oh, Steven Universe is a kid's show, so it should suffer no criticism. Well, that's ridiculous, because Teletubbies is a preschooler show, and it suffered mass criticism, and all that Teletubbies did was just roam around and do random things to distract babies. And Teletubbies got more criticism than Steven Universe. No one had problems back then criticizing Teletubbies for being a bad show, for just being literally a distraction for children, while Steven Universe, which has a lot of problems in terms of the basic aspects of what would require a show to be good, and it gets leeway. Steven Universe is like the Life is Strange of cartoons. No matter how bad it is, it gets likes by certain groups of people in the mainstream for very selfish reasons. Some being socio-political, others being emotional. And And this is not the standard. You want to determine good products because you got to remember, we are in a global market currently, meaning Western animation is competing with Far Eastern animation and other animation around the world. So when you bring out these bad products and you say that these bad products are the standard, they're competing with other products that have higher standards, with a community that has higher standards. And those products from those other nations will just completely destroy yours over time while your products erode. So for the sake of the future of cartoons, I don't think it's a good idea to put cartoons under such a low standard to where the cartoons can literally have plot holes and inconsistencies within animation and it just be okay. It just be likable because it makes you feel something. I can't control how you feel. If you like Steven Universe, that's fine. But you have to at least admit that these issues are there. You know, some people are watching Steven Universe to get closure, and I completely understand that. I don't recommend that, but I completely understand. Because I done the same thing. When it came to Naruto, I did the exact same thing. So for all those people who are watching it just to see how it ends, I completely understand. I don't recommend it because it will fuck you up. But if that's what you want to do, I won't stop you. Because I did the same thing, and I think it's something that you have to go through to understand how important this is. I grew up with Naruto. I love Naruto. I had the headband and everything. But at a certain point, Naruto went to shit, and I was done with it. And I called it out. And I liked Naruto. And it brings me to my next point. You can judge things that you like. I'll give some perfect examples. I like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but things like Jotaro having the exact same ability as Dio, while they fight, and no prior scene to kind of imply that he had the same ability, which, once again, Jotaro and Dio are the only exceptions to the rule, which raises a whole nother problem with the whole all Joestars are connected issue. That raises problems within itself. I had a problem with that. Although the fight scene was good amongst them and the action was really good, I had an issue that Dio was nerfed. Dio lost some of his abilities, and there was no explanation, or at least any good explanation, of why he lost his abilities. Dio should have been more powerful than Jotaro by leaps and bounds, but he was nerfed. He was nerfed massively, so Jotaro could beat him, and I was not a huge fan of that. Another example, I love Samurai Jack. I wasn't a huge fan of some of the changes to the 5th season, like the plot hole dealing with the Guardian. That is indeed a plot hole, and I didn't like it. Or the whole copying of Gurren Lagann at the very ending, because it's uninspired and it didn't make any sense. It didn't fit within the theme of Samurai Jack. I didn't like that, and I still like Samurai Jack. I think everything else was fine up until the last few episodes where the plot holes started coming in and the retcon started coming in. I wasn't a huge fan of that, but overall, I like Samurai Jack. Like, you can criticize things that you like. Hell, I've even criticized One Punch Man for its lack of government and police, which they later on did address, but the government issue still hasn't been addressed. The military issue hasn't been addressed. Because the Hero Association is not a government entity. It's an organization. It's a civilian-funded organization. It's not the government. And the government should have a military to help the Hero Association, but they don't exist as of yet in the series. And I've mentioned that to be an issue. And I can go on and on of things that I like that I've criticized for things that make no sense. I think the only few things that I haven't criticized was the Vagabond manga and the Berserk manga, and that's pretty much it. That's the only thing I have no criticisms against. Everything else I've had some degree of criticisms against, and I still like those products. I mean, another good example is the 3D Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm not a huge fan of the newer designs of that series, but overall I still found it entertaining, despite it being so radically different than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that I grew up with. So you can criticize something and still like it, and if you like it, more power to you. But Steven Universe does have a lot of problems that do need to be addressed and do need to be taken seriously before they get worse. But that's just my final thoughts on Steven Universe as of now, and that's where I'm pretty much going to end the video. But I think I've already made my case. I think I've already proven my point, and I know some hardcore Steven Universe fans, the Steventards are going to come on in like NPCs or like Ugandan Knuckles and try to give excuses upon excuses upon excuses upon excuses. And all I'm going to say is that I'm going to invoke Auraman's law. I'm going to invoke Auraman's law. And if you see bullshit in the comment section below, you shut that shit down. You shut it down, you call them out for bullshit, and then we move on. For now, and hopefully I don't have to come back for a third video, I'm done with Steven Universe, and I am moving on. The last video was the pain, this was the pleasure. And now you know, Steven Universe is absolute garbage, and that was why.
Nigga, 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 nigga. I'm 200% nigga.
Is it really worth it? Is it really worth the cute fan art and the cool theories? Is it? Is it? Please Please don't attack me. 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 You're drawing the characters all wrong. Are you whitewashing? Are you fat shaming? If you don't support my ship, then you're a racist, homophobic, misogynist. Nope. Nope.
I don't want to be that Steven Universe fan, but I can't take this seriously after you animate a segment with Samurai Jack not just brutally murdering the gems.
Okay, first of all, I didn't animate that. If you watch my video and you weren't too busy being, triggered, you could clearly see I shout out the guy who actually animated that video. So I kind of find it kind of funny that you think that I animated that video. I just put somebody else's video in my video. That's all I did, so that's very funny that you mentioned that.
But also curiously killing Steven with his sword, with human blood spewing everywhere. No matter the problem you have with pacing or writing, Steven Universe himself is not a mean-spirited character and doesn't deserve to be depicted in that way. This isn't even a South Park or Rick and Morty kind of black comedy. This is just dark and vengeful and says way more about you as a person rather than any problem the show has. And yes, the Steven Universe fandom has huge problems.
You have no idea.
But depicting realistic child murder with such a gentle character doesn't make things right either. Okay?
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Back up, buddy. Steven is not real. He's a fictional character. Showing fictional murder isn't a crime. You need to calm that shit down, boy.
No show is perfect, but I'm coming to the conclusion that just like with other fandoms, Star Wars, Warhammer, anime, and aforementioned Rick and Morty, etc., videos like these are a right-wing backlash to progressive themes.
True, I don't disagree with that.
Being added to these programs. And yes, even though the left-wing fans of Steven Universe have huge problems themselves,
once again,
you have no idea.
So too the right-wing violent reactionaries.
Well, I'm not right-wing, so I don't... That does not apply to me.
No wonder Rebecca Sugar doesn't respond to fans on social media anymore, as the first few seconds of this review are downright disturbing.
Okay, the reason why she doesn't respond to fans is because the fandom attacked her. That has nothing to do with me or any other person that's ever made a rant video about Steven Universe. Most of the people that attacked Rebecca Sugar are Steven Universe fans, and I think I showed the evidence of that in my video as well as other videos. So I also find that kind of funny that you mentioned that.
Nothing is holy to the alt-right.
Hey guys, PewDiePie here. Death to all Jews. I want you to say after me, death to all Jews. And, Hitler was right. I really opened my eyes to white power. And I think it's time that we did something about it.
And honestly, I'm not surprised by this. But still, this is just downright depressing. What a way to ruin the otherwise semi-decent set of arguments.
Okay, so what does the alt-right have to do with this? I mean, I'm not alt-right. I mean, if you couldn't tell, I'm black. The alt-right doesn't exactly like me that much, just for purely existing. So I don't know what that has to do with anything. I don't know what the alt-right has to do with anything. So I just find this kind of funny that you're blaming the alt-right when a black man tore down your show. But yeah, let's move on.
I understand you think Steven Universe is a bad show, but does it really require a 2-hour video to tear it apart?
Oh, yes.
Can we just let kids enjoy what they want? I want everyone to have a voice and be able to say what they want to about things. But this video literally doesn't say anything that hasn't been said before.
Okay, one, not true. I said a lot of things that haven't been said before. I called out a lot of stuff that a lot of people did not call out, including a lot of plot holes, a lot of inconsistencies, and even bringing some mainstream media attention to it. But I guess that's just your opinion, man.
And it just seems like you made it because the show's entire existence slightly bothered you.
Oh, trust me, it didn't slightly bother me. It bothered me a lot, for many different reasons.
Why do you feel it's necessary to reuse this same recycled material?
Well, I didn't really reuse any recycled material. I mean, I just stated my opinion of the show, and that's what came out. If you don't like it, well, that's just you.
And even if it was for the sake of comedy,
which it was,
your attitude towards anyone who doesn't share the same view as you is disappointing. I like seeing criticisms of things I love.
Well, apparently you didn't like this one.
It helps me appreciate what's good about them even more.
Are you sure about that?
But when you pin comment is even Steven Universe is objectively a bad show, you sound a little dickish.
A little dickish? What the fuck? Okay, calm down there, buddy.
Downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral.
Or you could realize the fact you're arguing and complaining about a show that's made for kids.
And you know why? Because I just don't give a fuck.
How about you grow a pair and don't waste an hour and 53 minutes ranting about a kid's show and do something with your life, because this is a huge waste of time.
Excuse me, what? Okay, buddy, Ginger Kid, say that to every cartoon channel in existence. I'm just saying, because they talk about cartoons all the time. I mean, no one has a problem when someone's praising a cartoon. Like, I bet money, if I made a video about 2 hours long praising Steven Universe, you would not have made this comment. No one would say anything. If people would be praising me, people would be treating me like I was another messiah, like Steven Universe, if I spent 2 hours praising the damn show. So don't even give me that bullshit. Because by your own logic, every cartoon channel on YouTube full of a bunch of people wasting their time.
Unlike pretty much every other cartoon channel, like 99% of them who are spurks, who are grown-ass man-children who are obsessed with children's cartoons. So you won't get a lot of serious criticism from them. You won't get a lot of, pointing out that the cartoons are actually bad.
And by the way, I believe kids deserve good cartoons too. There are plenty of good cartoons that I actually like myself. Steven Universe is just not one of them. And it's not my fault that Steven Universe has so many problems. You could literally write hours upon hours upon hours of content about it. That's not my problem. That's the show's problem. I don't think I can do this with any other show, to be honest. Steven Universe is just that bad. Get over it. Face facts.
How many freaking hour-long documentaries are there about Steven Universe being bad? I mean, they're popping up everywhere.
Well, that can't be right. I'm the only person that ever released the Steven Universe Rant documentary. Unless there's another Rant documentary that I don't know about. I think what you meant is Rant videos, but I'm not entirely sure. But from what I know, my video is the only type of documentary that exists of Steven Universe, or at least a Rant documentary anyway. So that's a bit weird.
It's not a bad show. It's just a good idea that was executed horribly.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait, first of all, you're not gonna speed past that like you didn't just say what you just said.
Well, that's a bad show. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. If the concept is good and is executed horribly, it's still a bad show. It's still a bad product. I mean, the perfect example that comes to mind is the Berserk anime. You know, the new one, the 3D one. I mean, Berserk is very good, especially the manga, but that anime was complete and total horseshit. It just didn't flow well. It was animated poorly. The 3D was just kind of like all over the place. It didn't blend well with the actual show. It was just a bad product. But Berserk is still overall good because it has at least the manga to, back it up. The Steven Universe, on the other hand, does not have such a thing. I mean, the overall quality of the product is still bad, even if the idea or the intention was good. That's just the way it is. I don't know what to tell you, buddy.
Funny Valentine is greater than Dio.
We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again.
No disagreements here. I mean, the man's like the president of the United States.
Yo, real talk. My name is Ronaldo, and if you tell me fuck me one more time, we are going to have some serious issues.
Fuck you!
You're an idiot.
Okay, buddy.
Elijah the Auraman.
Fuck you!
They literally explained the Fusion Temple room thing in the exact episode. Garnet doesn't have a room unless she exists.
Well, that was not my point of argument. My point of argument is I thought it was strange that fusions had rooms to begin with. I mean, do all fusions have rooms? I mean, this is the argument I literally made in my video. I don't know why Steven Universe fans feel like they have to make arguments that I don't make. Not to mention, I actually did more research on the temple, and there's some concerns I have. For instance, if the temple procedurally randomly generates rooms, why are all the rooms connected? I mean, is that by the choice of the gym, or does the temple automatically connect the rooms? Don't you find that to be a bit strange that all the rooms are connected? And what if a gym is poof? For example, when Amethyst got poofed by Jasper, did her room vanish? And what about all that stuff in her room? Wouldn't it flow into Pearl's room? Like, what happened with all that stuff? Is it still there? Is her room in disarray? Like, there's many questions here. And when Lapis took the barn, why didn't Peridot just make her own room? Or why didn't the Crystal Gems teach Peridot how to randomly generate her own room? Wouldn't that have made more sense than her sleeping in the bathroom? She could have had a room of her own. Not to mention, I feel like this is going to bring up plot holes later. You know, I'm not going to watch the future episodes, but we know for a fact that Bismuth is still on Earth, that Lapis and Peridot are still on Earth, and they don't have a home because the barn was crashed into Blue Diamond. So the whole thing just seems very, very open to flaws. It just really does. But yeah, basically that was my argument. That's all.
Why make an hour-long vid on a show you didn't have to watch? If you think it's so bad, keep it to yourself and just don't watch it. That's simple.
Well, my friend, if you watch my video, you know the exact reason why I made the video and continue to watch it. But you know, since I have to remind you, I did make a deal with the devil and was forced to watch it and make a video about it. So I didn't really have much of a choice. FYI.
Dude, 2 hours?
Well, it's not my fault Steven Universe is that bad. And I'm not the only one who made a 2-hour video on Steven Universe being bad.
Only Shadman can save this show.
Agreed.
You see this right here? I 100% endorse this. This is good stuff. Brilliant.
The Fourth Reich will rise. Hail victory.
I love you. Come here. Let's do a hug. Oh, that's nice. I love you, baby. Come here. Give me a little. Tastes so good.
I think you mean Seek Heil? Comparing Yellow Diamond to D.L. Brando? When will the rants ever end? Yes, the show is flawed. We get it. Thank you.
Yeah, the show is extremely flawed. When will the rants ever end? Never. As long as the show continued to be flawed, the rants will keep coming for all eternity, man. Don't blame the player, blame the game, buddy. It's not my fault that Steven Universe sucks.
I like waffles. Too much redundancy.
Well, that's very specific. I mean, I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
Damn, people are dumb. Goodbye. I won't tell you context because y'all hate me regardless.
Well, how could we hate you if we don't even know what the problem is? This doesn't make any sense.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer? Every night, I can feel my leg, and my arm, even my fingers. The body I've lost. The comrades I've lost. Won't stop hurting. It's like they're all still there. You feel it too, don't you?
If you don't like the show, that's fine. More power to you. But does it really need a near 2-hour video for Christ's sake? Glad you're not ripping it apart like Lily Orchid was. But come on, 2 hours is kind of overkill.
Like I said, once again, and I'll say it again, not my fault. Steven Universe just has that many problems. I mean, you gotta also mention the fact that I didn't even get even all the problems, nor did I elaborate fully on every single problem that I brought up.
I understand that people can do whatever they want with their content, and in most cases, they are right, but is it just me, or is it becoming trendy to shit all over Steven Universe?
Well, I've hated Steven Universe since the very beginning, or at least around season 2. I mean, I had some mild interest in the show, but Steven Universe was in reality always shit. I mean, if you look at my first Steven Universe video, which was approximately in 2015, I even outright said it that I hated the show even back then, and that was years ago. So, if you think that I'm jumping on some type of trend, that is false. Just because Steven Universe rants are coming out now, which is a bit weird because there were Steven Universe rants coming out years ago too, doesn't mean it's becoming trendy. It's just that bad of a show.
We don't need any more of these. We get it.
That sounds like your problem, nigga.
Well, that's just too bad, buddy. You're gonna get a lot more in the future. I guarantee it.
Cars is sexier.
No disagreements from me.
Man, I'm really getting tired of all these rants. They're all the same, and even some of these have some good points. The majority are just bad. And also the majority make false statements about the show and crew. You should really rant on something else. At least it would be more original.
Well, I rant about whatever the fuck I want. And are you calling me a liar? Are you trying to say I was promoting false information? And if so, where was the false information? Because I didn't take anything I didn't have evidence for. Every statement I made in my original video had evidence behind it. So I really want to know what false false statements I'm making. And like I said before, and I'll keep reiterating this, there's going to be more rants in the future because Steven Universe is just that bad of a show. Just get used to it. Just accept it. It's just the way of life. The show that you like is just not as good as you thought it was.
Ugh, I'm so tired of these type videos.
Nice grammar there, buddy.
Steven Universe is good.
Wrong.
That is.
I'm offended. Steven Universe is a good show and you're being mean.
Oh, God. Oh, I'm just being so mean. How dare I be mean to this show that's just so terrible in every possible way. God forbid if the show has bad writing, bad characterization, and bad animation. That's all my fault. I'm just being mean for pointing it out. I'm such a bully, guys. I just can't help myself.
Man, these Steven Universe criticisms are getting worse. Look, you can criticize cartoons, but this was overly long, superficial one. You point out inconsistencies, which is story criticism 101. How does your video differ from the 5 million other Steven Universe?
What? Okay, that sentence doesn't make any sense. I think you mean by the 5 million other Steven Universe rants, and that doesn't make any sense anyway because Steven Universe rants are in the minority of Steven Universe content on YouTube, especially the good ones. So there's only like 5 really, really good Steven Universe rants, maybe 10 at most. So I don't understand what the issue is here, but okay.
I mean, Rumble Buddies actually came at it from a perspective of an actual artist, explaining not just that things are badly drawn, but goes into the shot comparison, angles, mice in scene, and shit. Let the Orchid battle the themes and actually explain why, from a leftist perspective, the centrist neoliberalism of the show could be damaging. I disagree with her analysis greatly. Fuck easy peasy. Make the most racist and dumb shit of all the critiques, but it had the novelty of being notable. You aggregated a lot. I guess your thing on copycat YouTube channel stuff was okay, but I don't see what you bring to the discussion.
Well, I brought up plot holes in writing to the discussion. I also brought up to the discussion that the mainstream media promoted the show to all hell, and promoted the show purely because of homosexuality and progressivism. Not to mention I also brought up the conversation of world building and how a lot of things in the world building doesn't make any sense, including in going in depth with certain characters. I mean, I did bring something new to the discussion whether you like my video or not. A lot of people who said I didn't bring anything new to the discussion are obviously either being disingenuous or they're outright lying, because there's a lot of things I said in my video that no other video has ever said before, and I know that to be a fact, and even to this day that fact still remains true. Just because you don't like my video doesn't mean I didn't bring anything new to the discussion.
I don't care if you hate Steven Universe.
I've heard this line so many times I can't even count anymore.
I don't care if you like Steven Universe.
So trust me, I don't, buddy.
But if you purposely shame people for hating or liking the show,
which I didn't do,
you're just annoying. It's not just the Steven Universe fandom. Everyone does this.
I don't disagree with that.
They always forget to remember what an opinion is and argue on whether it's good or bad.
I literally did that in my video.
Like, you can share your opinion, just don't try to brainwash people into your opinion.
How the fuck did I try to brainwash people into my opinion? I'm not a hypnotist. I just gave them facts, like literally hard, pure facts. And then, people can make up whatever mind they want. If you still like the show, even though the show is heavily flawed, that's you. But saying that I'm brainwashing people, that's a bit kind of ridiculous, don't you think? I mean, I don't have that sort of power. But I mean, if you want to give me that sort of power because my arguments are just that convincing, then okay.
Everyone in the comments is doing this.
Do they not have the right to comment on my video? I don't really understand. Am I controlling them to comment on my video? Is that where we're going with this?
It's just the way an average human mind works.
Yeah, I mean, let people comment. Like, I don't understand. No one's brainwashing anyone.
If someone has an idea, they will often stick to that idea, even if they're not very stubborn. PSA, don't try to manipulate people into your opinion.
How did I try to manipulate people? I just gave them hardcore facts. Like, what? I guess facts equal manipulation. What a world we live in, guys. Where if you state facts, you're trying to manipulate people.
It's just a waste of yours and other person's time.
Well, I don't even know what to say to this. I mean, I didn't try to manipulate anyone. All I stated was fact and I showed pure evidence. I mean, if there's something that's false in my video that doesn't have evidence backing it up, you can point it out if you want in the comment section below. I don't really give a shit, but trying to say that I'm trying to manipulate people by showing them facts, that's a bit ridiculous if I do say so myself.
This is a bad video, and I like people shitting on Steven Universe.
Well, can you explain why? I mean, the overwhelming majority disagrees with you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
What the fuck did I just spend 2 hours watching?
Well, you just watched the Steven Universe Rant documentary where I categorize all the problems with Steven Universe, or at least as many problems as I could possibly find. Because with Steven Universe, there are so many problems you couldn't find them all, even if you tried.
And why you even critique the fandom?
Because the fandom is a part of Steven Universe as a topic. I mean, why not?
They aren't involved in the production or story of the series.
Kind of redundant. I mean, when you come to the topic of Steven Universe, the fandom is still a part of Steven Universe.
There are just suck people that likes that show.
Agreed, I guess? There are suck people that like the show, so yeah. I don't understand what this argument has to do with anything. I mean, I have the right to talk about the fandom because it is within the topic of the show. People have a right to know, you know, how crazy the fandom is. I don't really understand what the argument is.
Big fan of Steven Universe.
Oh god, here it comes.
I got approximately 1 minute and 49 seconds in. Based on the opening and the comments, and the main point of your video is a valid each other, which I guess is fine.
Okay. Did you like the video? Did you hate the video? I don't know where this is going. You're kind of blue-balling me here. I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't think anyone is validating anyone's opinion. I think people are just agreeing and disagreeing with each other. I mean, I do have people in the comments disagreeing with me. So, I mean, hell, you're a fan of the show and you commented that you disagreed with me. So I don't really see the problem. At least I think you claim that you disagreed with me. I don't even know.
Shot base. Just shot base.
I don't know what this is, but it's kind of hot.
While you are making some good points, 80% you said is simply wrong.
What the fuck was that?
Really? 80%? Even the stuff that I had citations about, I was completely wrong? I mean, 80% is basically the entire video. I mean, you gotta give me some pure detail of the 80% that I got wrong, even though I have citation and evidence for. That's quite interesting. 80% of what I said was simply wrong. Oof. I'm not sure about that, Chief.
Steven Universe isn't a bad show.
No.
Steven Universe is not good. I not make video because I want to seem like contrarian.
The fuck did I just read? One, I didn't make the video because of contrarian reasons. I legitimately don't like the show, like a bunch of normal people. And like I said before, and I'll say this again, I made my earliest video on Steven Universe, which was in 2015. I blatantly stated that I hated the show. So saying that I'm being a contrarian for making this video is a bit kind of disingenuous and a bit ridiculous. But I mean, I guess you wouldn't know that, El Mustachio.
Elijah the Auraman, boo! Dub Dio. Jojo, dubbed is a sin.
You spelled Jojo wrong.
Kira is greater than Dio. Also, dub? Really? Aside from that, good video.
なかなか面白そうなやつだな。君の名前とかいろいろ知りたいところだが、ここを立ち去らねばならんのだよ。あと20秒しかない。無駄話をしている暇はもうないんだ。無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無駄無 あと20秒しかない。残りあと2秒。
The only problem in this video is that you use JoJo's dub and not sub. Wink. I'm disliking just for using dubbed Dio.
We spend so much time fighting over dubs or subs that we miss the big picture.
Thanks for giving the JJBA dub some love.
Hey, no problem, buddy.
Tackle RWBY.
I mean, maybe. The show is calling itself an anime, and it does have a manga, so it wouldn't be out of the scope of my reach, so, yeah, I might give it a shot one day. Can't guarantee nothing, though.